Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Fem Haku falls in love with Naruto Chunin exam. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by RaiderXV and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1, Surprise. Naruto scowled at Kakashi and asked, "Why doesn't Sakura-chan or you help me with tending to Haku-san?" Kakashi sighed and replied, "Because Zabuza said that you, not me, not Sakura or even Sasuke, were responsible for Haku-san. Haku is boy, and I'm quite sure that Sakura isn't ready to see a boy naked. Now go tend to Haku's wounds and clean him up. He will be a good addition to Konoha. You can use some of your extra clothes for Haku-san to wear until we can get his stuff from their hideout, or lair." Naruto grumbled, but also saw the glare from Sakura. She had told him earlier that she was really pissed that he had saved the life of the person who had hurt her Sasuke-kun. He also knew that Sasuke might not be so friendly towards Haku, but now that he was responsible for Haku, he would do what needed to be done. After all, a Hokage has to take care of the village, and he was going to be Hokage, and someone who they consider their first friend. He awkwardly carried Haku into the bathroom, making sure not to step on his long dark hair or jostle him too much while carrying him. Naruto then took off all his clothes and then proceeded to open Haku's battle kimono. He looked at the scar that was now present in the middle of Haku's chest, but continued to remove the robe gently, while he tried not to hurt Haku any more than possible, since Haku was still unconscious. He laid Haku down on the floor and then noticed the live body yet again, but something was off and he couldn't place it. He did notice that Haku's chest muscles were a little off, but didn't worry about that. He chuckled when he found out that Haku also wore boxers. He guessed that Haku's size was actually about the same as his. He then gently pulled the boxers down and noticed Haku's chest move, as if it were made of jello instead of muscle. Strange, he thought to himself, but quickly forgot about it. He then threw the clothes off to the side. He sighed at having to do this. Then a feeling struck him and he looked down at Haku's pubic area and found nothing other than a tuft of dark brown or black hair. He swallowed hard at this, but then a deep moan caught his attention. He then realized that he was actually a she. The blood that covering her chest had thrown his perception that Haku might have been male off. He now realized that her breasts were small, but also that they would fit well with her physique and her story. At least he guessed they did. He blushed brightly when he saw her brown eyes flutter open. "I'm sorry, I didn't know," he said apologetically. Her face turned away, as if in shame. "So, now you know," she said quietly, as he noticed shame written all over her face, as he turned to face her. He closed his eyes and waited for her to hit him. When the blow never came, he spoke, hoping she would continue the path of nonviolence. "Well, since I thought you were a boy, I'm sorry I was told to clean you up and help with your recovery since I'm responsible for you now," he said the last part in a whisper. She reached up and touched her chest and found not a hole, but a firm skin and sternum beneath it. She was sure that Kakashi had put his hand through her chest. She turned to the nude blonde who had turned his head again, but failed to cover himself. "So he's dead then, and we failed?" she asked meekly. Naruto turned to her with a hurt look in his eyes and said, "Yeah, Zabuza's dead and I'm sorry about that, but he died trying to protect you from Gato, after the jerk betrayed both of you." He swallowed hard, but continued to keep eye contact and said, "He told me that I was responsible for you now. I'm not sure what that means, but I promise that I'll do my best." Haku smiled sadly and said, "I am your servant, tool, or slave, whichever you prefer." "I'm only but a tool, and a broken one at that." "Slave?" he asked quietly in confusion. Haku nodded and looked back up at the ceiling and replied, "Very well, slave it is then. I will endeavor to serve you to the best of my abilities, master." She then changed the subject and said, "Now since you've seen me naked, it would be prudent for you to help me get cleaned up and then get me to bed, so I can rest and recover." "I'm sorry about seeing you," he said remorsefully. "It doesn't matter, Naruto-kun. What is done is done." "Do you like what you see?" she asked without any real emotion. Naruto looked at her again, his eyes traveling down and then back up again her figure. He took a deep breath and replied, "I really don't know how to judge what would be nice or not," he admitted. "I see it in your eyes. You've been hurt badly before. You were isolated like I was, weren't you?" she asked, as she raised a hand to meet his, while he helped her to the chair. She saw him nod, but he said nothing. She then continued, "Then Zabuza-sama was right." He looked at her in confusion, until she continued, "You're a Jinchuriki, aren't you?" She noticed the discomfort in his demeanor. She smiled warmly and said, "Zabuza had told me about those who possess malevolent chakra, since he knew Yagura, who he said had the three tails sealed within him. He warned me that you might be one, and you would be the right age to be the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi that attacked the village of Konoha. That was one of the only explanations we could come up with on how you were able to create so many shadow clones, also having Sharingan Kakashi as your sensei, to help make sure that the beast is controlled. The Sharingan is rumored to be able to control the tail beasts. Me being a bloodline holder from Kiri and you being a Jinchuriki, I can somewhat understand that your life was similar to my own in several ways. I wondered about the malevolent chakra that you used against me in our fight, finally beating me with when all else failed, and then it finally hit me that you might be a Jinchuriki. Because of what Zabuza said, I will serve you well, Naruto-sama." Naruto looked at her, and she opened her arms and fell forward into him. He became rigid at her touch. She began to rub her hand on his back and he was slowly starting to shake. "Haku-chan," he said at only a whisper. He slumped to his knees and into her arms. He knew that he was mostly holding her up, but he also wasn't used to such close contact. He also had pent-up emotions, since she had figured out his secret so easily. He then asked, "What do you want from me?" "Only to serve you, Naruto-sama, and maybe we can find some happiness together," Haku whispered into his ear. "Do you mean it?" he asked in a hopeful tone. "With all my being, Naruto-sama," she replied warmly. She then said, "We should get me cleaned up and then I can direct you to my hideout to get my belongings from there." He nodded and helped her back onto the chair. He did his best to push down the blush while he helped her wash her body. He got an eyeful while they finished cleansing her body of her own blood. He did notice the blush she wore when he cleaned her legs. He also helped dry her off and helped her into a spare pair of his boxers and one of his shirts. He then dressed into a new jumpsuit himself, and helped her out of the bathroom and onto a futon for some rest in a room that Tsunami had set aside for the two of them. Kakashi wasn't sure they were doing the right thing, but he did promise that Naruto would take care of Haku. Since the boy had a bloodline trait dealing with ice, it would benefit Konoha to have the boy in Konoha. Also the boy was a solid Chunin, or even low-level Jounin. He just wasn't sure how Naruto would adjust to having the boy in his life. Both were outcasts, and that should help them bond. The big problem was his other two students. Sasuke would not like that Haku had beaten him, and in turn that Naruto had beaten Haku. Sakura knew that Haku had hurt Sasuke, but she wouldn't be too much of a problem for Haku, even in his weakened state. He was brought out of his musing when Naruto came down in clean clothes and waved him over. Kakashi walked over to Naruto, while wondering what his most outrageous student had for him this time. "What do you need, Naruto?" Kakashi asked. "We might have a problem," Naruto whispered to his teacher rather nervously. "What could that be?" Kakashi asked. "Haku's a girl," Naruto replied in a whisper, bringing a cold shiver down Kakashi's spine. "Let's go speak to Haku-san then," he said in an even tone. Both walked up the stairs and into the room where Haku was laying down on a futon in Naruto's room, wearing one of Naruto's shirts. He then noticed that Haku was female, not just feminine looking, but female. He closed the door behind the both of them and asked, "So Haku-san, do you have something to tell me?" Haku grimaced, while sitting up and nodded her head towards the copy ninja. "I have two things to tell you. First is that I am a girl, but would rather your other students not know this fact if possible. Second, am I correct in that Zabuza-sama said that Naruto-kun is responsible for my care?" She asked and saw Kakashi nod his response, so she continued, "Given the answer that you and Naruto-kun have both given me, I'm now his slave and servant. He may do with me as he wishes. I will also see to it that he becomes stronger along with your training or die by his hands if that is his wish." Naruto fell over backwards when she mentioned being his slave and him possibly wanting to kill Haku. Kakashi sighed, but replied, "I have no problem with you helping him with his training, but in Konoha we don't have slaves. We will also have to talk to the Hokage and see what he decides to do with you. More than likely you won't be able to be a shinobi, but I'm sure that you will be welcomed. I would like to return the favor that Naruto-kun gave me. He gave me my life back, so I swear to serve him in any way I can until death," she explained. "Rest, Haku-san, and we will see what we can do to make sure that you can help Naruto here," Kakashi said happily, as he patted Naruto on the shoulder. Haku again grimaced, as she nodded to the elder shinobi. "Thank you, Hataki-san. I promise to serve you well, Naruto-sama," she said with a smile on her face. "I will leave you too, so that both of you can discuss things, Naruto." "Haku-san," Kakashi said, just before he left and closed the door behind himself. Naruto looked at Haku in confusion. "What is he talking about?" he asked. Haku sighed and replied, "He means that since I have promised to serve you, we need to discuss the extent of my service to you." Naruto tilted his head and said, "Huh?" Haku giggled into her hand and then said, "Naruto-kun, I owe you my life and my existence is now in your hands. Since this is the fact, you now own me mind, body and soul. I will do anything to make your life better. It is my promise to you." "You don't need to go so far," he replied, but was quickly cut off. "Yes, I do. I found a gentle and kindred soul in you. You are the second person who I have pledged my life to, and this time I will not fail." Zabuza-sama was the man I admired and cared deeply for. "In the short time that I have gotten to know you, I have figured out a couple of things. I know that you would never mistreat me, no matter what. I would give you my body and have your children to prove that I was worthy of your service," she said pleadingly. "I don't really understand, but I would want to be your friend before we got to all that mushy stuff," he explained. She giggled and he scowled, not understanding that he had reinforced her feelings in the matter. He couldn't stand his confusion anymore, so he asked, "What are you laughing at?" "You're so cute, Naruto-kun," Haku said with a giggle. She then cleared her throat and said, "I will help augment your training, Naruto-sama." Naruto's face became bright at that comment and he asked, "Do you mean it, Haku-chan?" Haku nodded, but then she scowled and said, "Naruto-sama, you can only call me Chan when we are alone, otherwise san or no honorific will be necessary. I don't want people to know that I'm female just yet. Maybe a little later, but not as of yet, it isn't safe. I want to make your life better and by doing that which might make my own better." Do you agree to this, master? Naruto appeared to think for a moment, and then said with a smile, sure, I'll do anything to make my first real friend happy. Haku smiled at this answer and held his hand while she explained where the hideout was, how to use storage scrolls and what he would need to take. Naruto had found the hideout after sending out several shadow clones. He entered the hut and found the rooms in the exact order that Haku had described. He took out the scrolls that Haku had prepared for him and began to store everything he could find. After an hour and several embarrassing moments, such as storing away her intimates drawer and a couple books of human anatomy with pictures, he came back to Tazuna's home a few hours later. He went up to the room with dinner for both Haku and himself. She was sleeping peacefully, but stirred at the smell of food. She opened her eyes and let him help her into a sitting position. I would like your help getting me ready for the trip to Konoha, she said. Does that mean? He asked tentatively and swallowed hard. She nodded, as she ate her food. So you want me to help you put your panties on? She swallowed her food and then took a drink of tea. She then replied, yes, Naruto-kun. I want you to familiarize yourself with my body, so that you can become a better shinobi. Again, I thank you for saving my life. Now we eat, and then we prepare for bed. I should be able to dress myself in the morning. Now let's talk about your abilities and ninja techniques. Naruto forgot all about having to help dress Haku, when the subject of techniques came up. The next few minutes were used to eat and discuss the techniques he knew. She scowled at him limited aptitude for techniques. She went into what she knew and how far he had come in his learning of shinobi ways. She found that he was fairly attentive until a subject would not be to his liking. Such subjects would cause him and his mind to wander. While not wanting to step on Kakashi's toes, she wanted to make sure her new master could take care of himself and thereby making her servitude worthy. They finished dinner, and he took the plates downstairs. He actually saw the scowl coming from his crush and asked, why are you so angry, Sakura-chan? Don't call me that. You kept the person who hurt Sasuke-kun alive, and now you're going to take him back to Konoha. I don't like it, she explained angrily. Kakashi sighed and said, now, Sakura. He did as his heart told him. Can you fault him for that? Yes, I can, and he is the cause of Sasuke-kun's pain, Sakura replied in an angrily huff, while pointing at Haku, who had just entered the room. Haku put a hand on Kakashi's shoulder and said, I see that you do not accept my being here, so I subject myself to Naruto-sama's discipline. He may do with me as he pleases, since I am his servant. You'll just get out of being disciplined by him, since he is too weak to handle you, Sakura said in a harsh retort. Haku's face became dark, and she glared at the pink-haired girl. She then said angrily, if it weren't for Naruto-sama then you would be quite dead along with your precious Uchiha. While he was able to activate his eyes, he was not able to best me, while on the other hand Naruto-sama was able to. That's because Sasuke-kun wore you down, Sakura replied smugly. No, there would be no way that I could have beaten Naruto-sama. His grief and anger at his loss were too much, as is his power. He wanted to protect both you and the Uchiha boy, Haku explained, but then grabbed Naruto's hand and led him up to the room, leaving a stunned Sakura. She turned to Kakashi and asked, is that true? Kakashi looked at Sakura and said, Naruto was able to beat Haku-san and kept him alive even after receiving an attack to the central chest that destroyed his left lung and more than likely destroyed his aorta. So don't sell Naruto short, he is strong, but not in the same way that Sasuke is. If someone with the same skills were to try to kill either you or Sasuke, he would be able to beat them, not easily, but he would still be able to beat them. He doesn't know his potential just yet, but he is learning. But Kakashi-sensei, he wasn't able to do the chakra exercise as well as I was, Sakura said in a bragging tone. It is easy to divert a creek with but a few stones, but to divert a river is quite a feat, Kakashi said cryptically, while Sakura looked at him in confusion. Naruto looked down when Haku had taken him into the room and locked the door. She lifted his head and asked, are you sorry that you saved me, Naruto-kun? No, it's just, he replied, as he trailed off and looked away. Just that she didn't accept what you had done? She asked sadly. Yeah, I guess that's it, he replied in a dejected tone. You like her, don't you? She asked with a smile on her face. He nodded a reply, but then she asked, how has she treated you over time? All right, I guess, he said in a not too convincing tone. Tell me about how your interactions with her have been up until this point, Naruto-kun? She asked hungrily. Well, when we first met, I helped to defend her from some bullies. I've done it a few times, but she got mad at me, he replied, but the last part was a whisper. So you wanted recognition for your doing a good deed for her? Haku asked with a wry grin on her face. Yeah, I mean no, I didn't expect anything in return, he said defensively. Haku giggled at the boy in front of her and asked, have you ever been kissed? Naruto's face went sour, and he said under his breath, yeah, was bumped into a kiss with team. So you lost your fist kiss to your rival. How cute, she replied in mock happiness. He growled and turned away from her. But when she didn't say anything he turned back only to find her face right in front of his. She gently tugged on his jacket, and he fell forward onto her lips. They were soft and supple, much better than Team's. She turned her head slightly to allow for a longer and deeper kiss. Her lips began to move and he mimicked her movement, and his eyes drifted closed like hers had already done. It was a mechanical reaction, but very pleasurable. When it finally finished, and she pulled away, he felt a strand of saliva break between their lips. He looked at her with both wonder and confusion in his eyes. You're wondering why I did that, aren't you? Haku asked, and Naruto nodded. She then explained, you now have my first kiss. I had hoped that Zabuza-sama would have had it, but he isn't here, so I gave it to my new master. You have my heart along with my body. You can do anything you please with me, but also remember that you are responsible for me. I will be your lover, even if you have others. According to Kakashi, slavery isn't really legal in Konoha, so I will be your servant and consort. Given that was our first kiss together, and there will be more. My job as consort is to instruct you in how to be a man. First lesson was kissing. We shall continue that lesson in a minute. We will also work out a training schedule for you and I, so that you can get stronger. Naruto dumbly nodded, as Haku again kissed him deeply. They broke and changed into their night attire. Naruto noticed she was wearing pajamas like him, but in different colors of course. After they made the futons, the door slammed opened, breaking the lock, and an angry Sasuke entered the room. What is he doing here? And how did you defeat him? Sasuke asked, but more demanded. Team, Haku-san, team, now we can have a polite conversation. Naruto asked threateningly. You will not order me, dope. Now answer my questions, Sasuke replied angrily. You wake up and the first thing you do is barge into my room and demand answers of me? Who had to clean up the mess at the bridge? Me, not your privileged Uchiha ass, Naruto attempted to explain, but was interrupted by a growling girl. Naruto, Sakura said angrily, as she entered the room and slugged Naruto in the jaw, sending him into the wall. Now answer me, how did that loser beat you when he couldn't even take on Sakura here? Sasuke asked angrily. Simple, he likes Sakura-san, Kami knows why, but he does. If he were to try and actually fight her, she would lose quite quickly, Haku explained. Naruto groaned and picked himself up off the floor. He wiped blood from his lip and scowled at Sasuke. Haku glared at the pink-haired girl and asked, Can I exact some vengeance, master? Naruto shook his head, but also saw Kakashi in the hallway looking rather angry. No, I think they will have some comeuppance in a minute or so, Naruto said cryptically, but realization appeared on Haku's face when she saw Kakashi slowly moving into the room. Right, now answer me, Sasuke said angrily. Yeah, answer, Sasuke-kun, Naruto baka, Sakura chimed in angrily. Both of the genin jumped when they heard Kakashi ask, what was the question? Sakura and Sasuke turned to Kakashi with a smiling glint in his eye. I wanted to know how he beat me, Sasuke replied. Kakashi's face turned into a scowl and he said, So you break into a teammate's room and demand answers from an injured and captured combatant? Haku-san is under Naruto's protection, so go easy on him. Also, you're scaring our hosts with your yelling, Sakura. Now we can discuss things on the way back. Good night, Naruto, Haku-san. Come with me, Sakura, Sasuke. We have a few things to discuss about etiquette. He shook his head and said just loud enough for everyone to hear. I figured it would be Naruto that I would lecture about these things. Naruto got up and closed the door and attempted to relock the door, but it had a broken locking mechanism. He was somewhat successful. He turned to find both the futons closer to each other than they were before. He swallowed hard when he saw the warm smile on Haku's face. We're not going to tonight, are we? He asked tentatively. Haku shook her head with sorrow written over her face. We are not going to be lovers so quickly, Naruto-kun. We are going to work our way through the process. First we sleep in the same room and become comfortable with each other's presence. I noticed in the shower that you have an aversion to close contact that you don't initiate, she explained. Getting a confused look on his face, she continued, You froze when I hugged you in the shower. We need to get past that for anything to happen. Also we need to work on your skills, for you sleep too heavily in the field. Oh, and by the way, we will be sharing the same bed when we get to Konoha. His eyes went wide, but he moved to the uncovered futon at Haku's bidding. She lightly kissed him, and then whispered to him, You will also help me mourn for Zabuza-sama. Naruto woke up to find Haku struggling with getting out of her pajamas. He sighed and helped her out of them and into clean clothes, including panties and a wrap for her chest. He then dressed himself and they packed up their belongings. He also noticed the redness around her eyes since he knew that she had cried herself to sleep in his arms the night before. They then headed down the stairs and joined the others for breakfast. Breakfast was a quiet affair and then Haku helped Tsunami with the dishes. Sakura glared daggers at Haku, but said nothing and finally went back to fawning over Sasuke. Naruto looked at this with new eyes. He had wanted the girl's attention for a couple reasons. First, he wanted to get her attention away from Sasuke. It was an ego thing, he finally determined to have something that Sasuke had. Secondly, he wanted her attention, because he felt, since he helped her, he deserved at least to be acknowledged by her. In a way, he was the idiot teammate. This depressed him, and even more so when she didn't even notice his lack of happiness around her. After the fourth dismissal from Sasuke for a date, she finally got her stuff ready. Naruto sighed heavily, but then noticed Haku sitting by his right side and Kakashi sitting on his left side. Kakashi spoke in quiet tones, but said, I will support this if and only if you work harder on getting along with your teammates, deal? Haku nodded at this and Naruto looked down at the ground and then nodded agreement. Kakashi then continued, I would like to know what you plan to teach Naruto, so that I can integrate it better into the team. I know the other two have problems, but with you at his side, he will start to correct the problems he has. I haven't been able to do it, maybe you can, Haku-san. Also when you get into town I would seek out Hyuga Hayashi as a secondary sponsor for a clan, since I'm pretty sure you'll not be able to become a full-fledged shinobi, at least for a little while. Then seek out Naruto's personal physician, she can sponsor you in the hospital, as a possible medic need. This will help to alleviate the extra burden of having 2 mouths to feed. It will also give you something to do while Naruto is on missions, or just to get some time away from him to help out your relationship. Haku bowed in her chair and replied in a similar whisper, You are most gracious, Hataki-san. I will do as you ask for Naruto-kun. First off I will be teaching him weapons and stealth. Afterwards we will be working on chakra control and beginning jutsu. His reserves are enormous. With his problem Kakashi's eye went wide, but he said nothing. He finally nodded and Haku continued, I will lastly work on his speed after that. He can work on his strength during the whole time. She then scowled at him and asked, Are there any merchants that will help him with proper shinobi clothing? Naruto gritted his teeth and said quietly, But I like orange. Haku nodded but replied, Orange isn't the problem. It is your blonde hair, and the bright orange that are the problems. You show up too easily. You can wear that around town, but I want you to wear something proper when on a mission. Naruto appeared to sulk, but then said, But this outfit is comfortable. Kakashi put his hand out to catch the pair's attention and said, I know of a couple people that don't hold anything against him, so he will be able to get stuff from them. We can go to them after you're debriefed. Kakashi chuckled at Naruto's eyes going wide, but then said they will be asking Haku-san questions, not taking his clothes off. Haku giggled and Kakashi chuckled when Naruto sighed heavily in relief. Kakashi stood up and clapped his hands together, while he said, Well, time to go, since the bridge is done. We will escort Tazuna to the bridge, and then bid him a fond farewell. The shinobi and the family approached the bridge, but were greeted by all the villagers, wishing the group a fond farewell. A couple of Naruto's clones came running up the bridge from behind the group. One handed Tazuna a scroll and winked at him before he disappeared in a puff of smoke. The second handed Naruto a scroll and nodded to him and Haku. Haku smirked, but said nothing. Sakura and Sasuke looked at the blonde in confusion, before Sasuke spoke up and asked, What was that about, Do? Naruto smirked and said, Nothing. Sasuke rolled his eyes, but didn't continue his line of questioning. He was more interested in why the Kiri missing Nin was going with them to Konoha and why was he staying so close to Naruto. The thing that disturbed Sakura, but only a little, was Naruto and Haku going arm in arm. Naruto explained it as way to help Haku travel. Even after the explanation from Kakashi that Naruto had inadvertently healed Haku with a forbidden technique and that Haku felt obligated to help Naruto, too many things didn't fit. Sakura seemed oblivious to anything around them, but him, so he just ignored her. The trip back to Konoha was quiet, with only light conversation between Naruto and Haku about what life in Konoha was like. This was disturbing to both Sasuke and Kakashi, who knew that Naruto was hiding the truth from Haku. But Kakashi wasn't worried since apparently she understood the life of Jinchuriki was hard and knew that he was looking through rose-colored glasses when they took a break. Haku would watch Naruto throw some kunai and shuriken. She would then correct him on his technique. After a couple days the walls of Konoha came into sight through the trees. Haku had also talked Naruto into attempting to stick a leaf to his forehead. This worked, but not as well as expected. The leaf would stick for a minute, but then it would shred, while parts of the leaf would disintegrate into dust. Another part would seem to gain condensation. Haku looked questioningly towards Kakashi, who looked on in fascination at how the leaf had done this. He might want to get some chakra paper to figure out what chakra type Naruto was. Chapter 2: Truths Hidden and Revealed. The team was ushered into the Hokage's office. Hello, Team 7. I hear your mission didn't go as planned, and who might this be? Hiruzen asked happily. Naruto shuffled, but answered, Yeah, and this is Haku-san. We met him on the mission. He has a cool ability with ice. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow and asked, So you're a Hayatan user? Haku nodded, but didn't say anything. I will ask you some question in a little bit. Haku, Hokage-sama. Haku replied to fill in the missing information with a bow. He nodded at the information. The debriefing continued all the way until they left Wave, but left out the fact that Haku was female. Hiruzen noticed Naruto being very careful about how he described Haku, and what was going on with Haku. He also was quite adept at avoiding referring to the Kyuubi directly. He also made sure to help Kakashi and Naruto hide the facts from their team. They would explain it to him later. After hearing the story he dismissed Sakura and Sasuke. So what information did you not want your team to know about Haku-san here? Hiruzen asked with a veiled smile on his face. Naruto looked down and blushed, but then said, Gigi, Haku's a girl. Hiruzen took a long draw on his pipe and then asked, I see, so you want the fact that you're female hidden from others for now? Haku nodded, but also said, I am Naruto-sama's by battle rights, and thus will only serve him. He is still a little young for that to happen, but I will be Naruto-kun's no matter what. Since I can't be with Zabuza, I will be with Naruto-sama. That wouldn't go over too well here, since you have a rare bloodline and a lot of clans would want to incorporate you into their clan, Hiruzen explained. He then asked, Why are you so set on having Naruto-kun? Haku bowed to the elder Hokage and replied, Because he is responsible for me. I see, since I cannot allow you to become a shinobi at this time, I will allow you to work with another clan head, and they will sponsor you as a clan leader, and then Naruto-kun could be your concubine. Hiruzen said with a chuckle. He looked at Naruto, who just blushed heavily. He then shook his head and said, that also might be a problem, because he is the Jinchuriki of Kyubi? Haku asked pointedly. Hiruzen sighed and replied, there are more complications than that when dealing with Naruto-kun. Haku raised an eyebrow and asked, such as? Hiruzen sighed and looked at Naruto and asked, can you and Kakashi please leave us for a minute, Naruto-kun? Naruto huffed, but both left the room. He sighed heavily again and said, Naruto-kun has been alone almost his entire life and may not understand what you're offering. Naruto glared at the door and said, it isn't fair. Why do they get to talk about me behind my back? Kakashi chuckled and replied, because he is Hokage and we can't go against his will. A few minutes later, door opened and a very pale Haku walked out the door. She then asked, can we go home now, Naruto-kun? Naruto reluctantly nodded, hoping she would talk to him. When she didn't, he led the way to his apartment. She quickly followed in his wake. Kakashi entered the office and closed the door behind himself and asked, so where will Haku-san fit in? I am thinking of having Haku-san entered into the medical corps for now, and later if things go well possibly interrogation. With the knowledge of herbs, learning medical techniques shouldn't be too hard, Hiruzen admitted. So do you think that Haku-san can bring Naruto up to snuff? Kakashi asked in a bored tone. The Hokage glared at the lazy jounin and replied, that was supposed to be and still is your job. Haku-san will augment his training, but also now knows that he is very lacking and is very angry at me for letting him become so far behind. I had to put Haku-san straight on a Hokage's role in a village. I think Haku-san and I have an understanding. I also gave Haku-san a choice. Naruto led Haku to his apartment. He opened the door and both left their sandals in the entry. Naruto closed the door, and when he turned Haku, who embraced him in a tight hug. Please hold me, Haku asked in a pleading tone. But Naruto attempted to reply, but was also partially paralyzed by her touch. Please was her only response, before she began to cry heavily. He awkwardly wrapped his arms around Haku and slowly began to rub her back. This continued for another 20 minutes. Her body then began to slack and he had to grab her and carry her bridal style to the bedroom. He looked around in fear and worry. The bed was not made, the floor had scrolls and ramen cups scattered around in haphazard fashion. After setting her on the bed, he created a clone, who began to pick up the room quietly. He then moved out to the kitchen and began to search it for food. Fresh food was not an option right now, and he knew that cups of ramen wouldn't work for them tonight. She needed actual food. While ramen worked for him and it was delightfully tasteful for him, it would more than likely not work for her. He made another clone that changed into a young blonde girl with ponytails. He then handed the girl some money. He then proceeded to clean the apartment of clutter. He felt sorry that he really didn't have anything to offer to Haku. From what he understood, she was now devoting her life to him, and only him. While he couldn't figure it all out, he was making do. Naruto understood that Haku needed some space, but he determined that he would be there for whatever she needed. His clone soon returned with some groceries and he began to try to cook. He cut the vegetables, which he didn't care for, but put them in a pot anyways. He followed this with noodles and some bouillon to give the soup some flavor. In actuality, he was making a sort of homemade ramen. He suddenly froze when he felt a pair of arms wrap around his upper chest and neck. He eased when he figured that the person behind him was doing so gently, and then a chin rested on his head. Hey, Naruto said in mock protest. Hush, Naruto-kun. I need you, Haku's soft voice said from on top of his head. She then continued, Zabuza-sama wasn't much for affection, but I long for it and for his approval. I know for a fact that you want affection and approval. Naruto nodded at the statement and agreed wholeheartedly, but wasn't sure if he could deal with the close contact just yet. She said that she needed it, so he would comply no matter how uncomfortable it would be for him. So, what did you and Gigi talk about? He asked while he stirred the pot. He felt a tear hit his head, felt bad that he had touched on a bad subject. We talked about me and about you. He informed me that I have to meet with the torture and interrogation unit, and also that unless I was ready to marry you that I could not be near you. I told him that I would not and could not live without you, she stated sadly, but he also heard some joy in her voice. She then continued, so Naruto-kun, you are now my husband. He turned inside her grasp and looked up into her eyes and asked, are you sure that you would want to be with a guy? She put her finger on his mouth and said, hush, Naruto-sama. While I'm not done mourning Zabuza-sama, it would be an honor to be the wife of the man who brought me back to life. If Zabuza-sama told you to be responsible for me, then I will do what it takes to make that happen. Naruto looked up at her in confusion and asked, so what does it mean? It basically means that I'm Haku Uzumaki, your wife. I signed the papers in the office, but also we have until the Chunin exams to consummate the marriage. If we do, we will be married by the Hokage after the exams, whether or not you make Chunin. With my bloodline and you being the Jinchuriki, we will be a new clan of Konoha. The wedding will be a quiet affair with only a small group knowing of the facts. This will limit the risks for both of us. I know that you have to be careful, and I have been tasked with both becoming a medical shinobi and also your secondary trainer, so that you can be a good clan head. Until you can take over the running of a clan, I am supposed to do that job, Haku explained. Naruto looked up at her and asked in confusion, what does consummate mean? Haku kissed Naruto gently on the lips and pressed her forehead to his. You are cute when you don't have a clue, Naruto-kun, Haku said affectionately. She sighed and then moved to his ear and whispered into it. What? He exclaimed and then promptly passed out. Naruto woke to a warm sensation. He opened his eyes to see brown eyes and a mess of black hair draped down towards him. A warm smile greeted him and accepting blown eyes. He then realized that he was in Haku's lap. Naruto swallowed hard and then asked tentatively, Do we have to do that now? Haku shook her head and replied, No, we can wait for a little bit. But if you want me to stay with you we will eventually have to do that, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded and then it hit him, so he asked, What will this do to Sakura-chan and I? Haku shrugged and replied, I'm not sure, she doesn't seem interested in you right now. We shall see how it goes and then we will decide. Will that work for you, Naruto-kun? He smiled brightly and nodded emphatically. She then pressed a finger onto his nose and said, We will not mention this to anyone, until we both agree that it is the right time. We both have to grow. I still am working on dealing with Zabuza-sama's death and you have to learn to be with me, so we both have a lot to get used to. So would Zabuza be like a father to you instead of a lover? Naruto asked. That could be true, but I just don't know just yet. On another subject, tomorrow we will start your training. Since I do not have to report to the Hokage tomorrow, I will accompany you to your team practice. If that is all right with you, Naruto-kun, she asked and saw him smile and nod. She then smiled and said, Shall we eat dinner? He nodded and got up. He started to walk towards the stove, but she put hand on his shoulder and guided him to a chair. You are my master and my husband. I will serve you, Naruto-sama, she said with a smile on her face. How did I get someone so pretty as you to care so much for me? He asked aloud. Haku blushed, but served the soup/ramen and they had a quiet dinner. She cleaned up the dishes and they then made the bed and went to sleep. Naruto was in for another night of soft crying from the girl. He knew that she was incredibly strong, but also had a gentle heart. He knew that he would help her through her mourning. Naruto woke to a predicament. Haku during the night had become tangled up with him in the sheets, but also somehow his hand had gotten inside of her pajama top and he knew if he moved he might destroy the top, or even worse, incur her wrath for having his hands inside of her top. Her breathing changed and he noticed a smile and a warm smile. Naruto-kun, if you want me to remove my top, all you needed to do was ask or you could have made it in order, she said happily, but her eyes showed hurt, but also some little amount of joy. She then undid the buttons, much to Naruto's embarrassment. When she finally removed the top, he was in an even worse predicament. She was now straddling him at the waist, without a top, and then she asked, Are we to consummate our marriage this morning, Naruto-sama? The tone was guarded and possibly hopeful, but he also detected some trepidation. Naruto's eyes leapt from her breast to her face. He continued to turn bright red at this, but finally said, No, we're not ready yet. His hand gently caressed the scar on her chest, but then he steeled himself to not be a pervert. He moved to try to gently push her off of him only for his hands cup her breasts. They were soft, but he also felt the muscle below them. He gently squeezed and saw the effects of this. Haku's eyes closed, and she both leaned her head back and pushed her chest into his hands. He squeezed them gently. To his surprise and pleasure she began to rock back and forth. This continued until both their eyes opened suddenly, and she sprang off of him and ran to the bathroom. For his part, Naruto was having trouble sitting up and his hands were still where they were when he was fondling her breasts. He finally rolled off the bed and noticed the tent in his pajama bottoms. It took all of his willpower for him to get himself back under control. They proceeded to dress quietly and got ready to meet his team. Haku walked alongside of Naruto and noticed the glares that went towards Naruto. Naruto scowled, but appeared to ignore them for the most part. Haku for her part walked beside, but slightly behind Naruto to the training grounds. She then saw a transformation in the boy. He went from melancholy to happy in just a second. He then exclaimed, Hey Sakura-chan. Sakura glared at the boy. She then walked over to Naruto and slammed her fist into top of his head. I told you not to call me that, she exclaimed to the now unconscious blonde. She then backed off when she felt killing intent directed at her. She looked around and saw an angry Haku. You are very lucky that he likes you, otherwise he or I would have ripped you apart, Haku explained. Sasuke smirked, while Sakura began to sweat and swallowed hard. She then stutteringly said, You don't scare me. Haku raised an eyebrow and asked, Really? Naruto had woken up, sighed and then said, Haku, that's enough, leave Sakura-chan alone. Don't call me Chan, Sakura exclaimed. Naruto wore a worried look upon his face, but then Haku said, Naruto-sama, we should start to train. We can work on your aim later. I have another exercise for you to do, this stream should do. Naruto stood up and followed Haku. She then began to explain the exercise. You have done the attaching exercise, correct? Huh? Naruto asked in confusion. You will have used a wall or tree to walk up it by using your chakra, Haku explained. Naruto nodded and then she continued, In this exercise we will work on a varying flow of chakra to stay on top of the water's surface. Now do what I do and do not worry if you do not succeed right away. Also don't go into the deep water just yet. She then put her hands in a ram's seal and walked on to the water. The surface only slightly rippled when she stepped on the water. Naruto looked excited and exclaimed, Wow. Now me? Haku nodded and he put his hands into the ram's seal. They watched as dust left the area around his feet. Naruto then took a step onto the water, while his foot went into the water. Luckily for him it was shallow. He stood in the water and tried again. Sasuke scowled and then jumped onto the water, standing on its surface. "See, I'm not a loser like him," Sasuke said in a hurtful and sarcastic tone. "Yes, but he didn't use a Sharingan to copy the technique. It is of more use to learn it for all you can than to just copy it, and thus be able to use it. While I'm annoyed at you, Sakura-san, you should also try this exercise. I would suggest that you not do it long, Sakura-san, since your chakra capacity is much lower than Uchiha-san and Naruto-sama," Haku explained. The next 20 minutes were spent attempting to stand on the water. Sakura finally had to quit, due to low chakra, but Naruto was still working on getting fully to the surface of the water. Sasuke was walking on the water, but would occasionally sink some, not understanding why. Haku watched, but said nothing, hoping that Naruto would get it before the Uchiha boy. Several minutes later Sasuke had to abandon the exercise from having low chakra levels himself. Naruto continued strong, impressing both of his teammates. Both were wondering, just how much chakra does he have? Naruto finally began to get standing on the water and started moving across the surface. This was an hour later, when Kakashi finally arrived. He raised an eyebrow at Naruto doing water walking training. He just announced himself by saying, "Yo." Naruto kept concentrating, while Sakura yelled, "You're late." Naruto slowly walked back to the bank and then sighed heavily and sat down. Kakashi walked over to the group and said, "I see that you're training them another chakra control exercise." He turned to Haku and asked, "So how long were they able to do it?" Haku replied, "Sakura-san was able to do it for less than 20 minutes before heavily exhausting herself. Sasuke-san was able to work on it for 35 minutes before getting mildly exhausted. Naruto-sama was able to do it for over an hour, and is barely winded." Kakashi clapped his hands together and then said, "Good, this is an example of chakra capacity and control. The exercise works on control, but will burn chakra quickly for those with genin levels of chakra capacity. That is the reason it is usually not taught to genin. Here is where I would rate you on your capacity and control. Sakura has low genin level of capacity, and high chunin to low jounin level of control. Sasuke has high genin to low chunin level of capacity, and mid genin level of control. Naruto has low genin level of control at best." Sasuke smirked at this, while Sakura giggled and Naruto scowled. Kakashi continued, "But he has high jounin capacity. He more than likely about twice or more the chakra capacity of myself." This surprised both of Naruto's teammates. Haku didn't seem surprised at all by Kakashi's statement. After some taijutsu spars and pointers from Haku on Naruto's form, the team prepared to take on a D-ranked mission. The team escorted Haku to the Hokage's building and from there she was escorted to the torture and interrogation unit. The mission completed quickly and Naruto waited outside of the TI building for Haku to finish. A few hours later a man with a long blonde ponytail exited the building and looked at Naruto. Naruto could tell that the man didn't care for him, but at least the man tried to hide his disdain for Naruto. He re-entered and brought Haku back outside. "Naruto, Haku-san is now in your custody. He will remain so for the next 2 weeks. He is not to be alone outside of your apartment until someone from the medical division comes to pick him up to start training there. Do you understand?" the man asked. "Yes, sir," Naruto replied, but also implied that he wanted to know the man's name. The man sighed, but then said, "Yamanaka Inoichi Ino's father. Now take him home, because he will need some rest. I would also get him some supplies, he will fill you in on the way." Naruto nodded, as he helped Haku to the store. Naruto changed into his female persona and bought some feminine hygiene supplies per Haku's request, along with other supplies needed like toothbrush and other amenities. They then went to a clothing store and bought some extra clothes for Haku. When they got there Haku was rather insistent that Naruto come back some other time and get himself some new clothes, but for the life of him he couldn't figure out why she wanted him to get some new clothes. They then headed to the market and then home. After a quiet dinner Naruto was introduced to the fun of meditation. This lasted all of 5 minutes before Haku headed to bed in frustration. Naruto apologized, but Haku insisted that it was the questioning that had her tired and lacking patience, not his lack of focus. They then went to bed, where Naruto got yet another night of Haku crying herself to sleep. Naruto was worried that she might be broken like she had described, but could do nothing, since she held on to him tightly throughout the night. Naruto woke to a pounding on his door. "Naruto!" was what he heard through the door and recognized it as Sakura. He was in a dilemma, since Haku and he were wrapped together by both the sheets and their position. He panicked when he heard the door open. "Haku, wake up!" Naruto exclaimed. Haku smiled warmly at Naruto, but then asked, "What's wrong, Naruto-kun?" "Sakura's coming in. We forgot to lock the door last night," Naruto exclaimed while the pair attempted to extract themselves from each other and the sheets. Naruto Sakura called into bedroom from the main room. "Wait a minute, Sakura-chan," Naruto called out only to fall out of the bed and hit his head. Sakura ran into the room and saw Haku getting off the other side of the bed and an upside-down Naruto lying on the floor, head first. She giggled, but then asked with a gasp, "Are you two sleeping in the same bed?" Naruto rolled to a sitting position and replied, "Yeah, like I have room for another bed in this apartment." Why are you here anyways? Sakura's face turned red and she replied, well, I wanted to thank Haku-kun for helping with training yesterday, but if I interrupted something then, I'll leave. Haku bowed and then said, you are welcome, Sakura-san, but don't think to assume anything about our living arrangements. Naruto-sama is a generous master, and doesn't want me to sleep on the floor. Thus I will not argue with him about the sleeping arrangements. Haku's face became darker and she said, if you start any rumors, I will make sure that you pay for it, whether Naruto-sama approves or not. Also any help I would give you would stop immediately. I live to serve Naruto-sama, and don't forget that, Sakura-san. If Naruto-sama had a separate room for me, I'm sure that I would be using his. But he is an orphan like myself, and he doesn't have that much money. Haku then took a contemplative pose and asked, would you disparage your friends if their whole family had to share a bedroom together? Sakura gave pause to the question, but then replied, I guess not, but it is kind of weird that you two are sleeping in the same bed. Naruto then smiled and asked, you ever had a sleepover? Sakura replied, sure, of course I have. He then smiled mischievously and asked, did you and Ino ever share the bed on a stormy night? Sakura blushed and replied meekly, yes we have. Well, Haku is still mourning Zabuza's death, so he both needs a bed to sleep on and someone close to help him out with the pain, Naruto explained. Still, it's kind of weird for two boys to share a bed, Sakura said. She then waved to the pair and left the apartment, closing the front door behind herself. Naruto breathed a heavy sigh of relief. Haku went around the bed and helped Naruto to his feet. They then began their morning routine, showering separately, getting dressed and then heading to the morning meeting with his team. They approached the bridge to find Sakura panting heavily on the bank of the stream and Sasuke standing on the water. Naruto glared at Sasuke and asked, what did you do to her team? Sakura rolled her eyes and said quietly, if only he would take that type of interest in me. She then looked at Naruto and said, leave Sasuke-kun alone. We've been practicing water walking. Naruto cringed at her angry tone, but Haku whispered into his ear, do not aggravate her if you want her to be with you, Naruto-kun. I was hoping that I would be enough for you. He heard a hint of regret in her voice and he saddened at the thought of hurting Haku. Sorry, Haku, but I thought never mind, but we need to keep up appearances at least, so that they don't get suspicious, he admitted. He also realized that Haku had from the night he had cleaned her up. She had devoted herself to him and that he was starting to feel for the girl in a similar way that he felt towards Sakura, maybe more so. He then said, Haku, I will be faithful to you. Haku giggled and replied quietly, you are my master. How many women you bet is up to you, but I'm not sure that I could hold myself back against that one with the way she treats you. It would be a short-lived liaison. Naruto paled at the implications, both the possibility of betting Sakura and that Haku might kill her after said betting. He wore a scared smile and nodded to Haku. She can be even scarier than Sakura, he thought to himself. He then moved to the stream and began to continue the water walking training. Kakashi showed up about an hour later, but seemed to be in a happy mood. Yo! Do I have something for you guys? He stated happily. You're late, Sakura exclaimed. It might be worth it this time, Naruto replied in a counter-argument. Kakashi reached into his flak jacket and pulled out some card-sized pieces of paper. He then handed them out to everyone present. He then took one for himself and said, this is chakra paper. It was made from a tree that has been infused with chakra since it was a sapling, so when you channel chakra into it, it will show you something neat. Haku-san, if you will demonstrate. Haku nodded and channeled some chakra into the paper. It split down the middle and both pieces were very soggy. She then said, water and wind in equal parts? Thus a bloodline limit for ice is possible. Kakashi then nodded to Sakura and said, your turn, Sakura. Sakura nodded and began to concentrate. The paper turned black and started to fall apart. She quickly jumped away from the paper, only for it to fall into pieces, and those pieces fall slowly to the ground like pieces of ash. Kakashi cocked his head and said, interesting. What does it mean, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked. You have a chakra type that fits your fiery personality, Kakashi replied cryptically. Naruto began to laugh and said, you mean Sakura-chan is a fairy? Sakura became angry, but stayed her hand with a look from both Kakashi and Haku. Sasuke looked at her in a way he had never before, almost with interest. Everything okay, Sasuke-kun? She asked hesitantly. As soon as she asked, his face turned back into an unreadable mask. Haku then said, Naruto-sama, her element is fire. Kakashi-san was making a joke about it being fire and her temper, which she should keep in greater check. The last part had an emphasis on Sakura keeping her temper in check, Kakashi quickly said, and moving on, Sasuke, if you please. Sasuke pushed chakra into the paper, and it crumpled. He looked at Kakashi in confusion, and the teacher replied to the unasked question, you're like me, lightning is your primary affinity, but you can use others. Like Sakura, whose is fire. While the Uchiha prided themselves on learning fire techniques early, quite a few were not that type, so they would have to figure out how to change their chakra to that particular type of chakra to do the fire techniques asked for in being recognized as an adult. While I know how to use water, earth, and fire techniques, my primary affinity is lightning, and paradoxically I have trouble with wind techniques. He then demonstrated by pushing chakra into his paper, and it crumpled like Sasuke's did. Naruto began to jump up and down, while shouting, my turn, my turn. Kakashi nodded and Naruto's brow furrowed when he pushed chakra into his hand with the paper in it. It split, but one side became damp and the other turned brown and fell apart like dust. He looked up at Kakashi, who wore shock on his face. He then asked timidly, "What does that mean, Kakashi-sensei?" It took a minute for Kakashi to reply, but when he did he said, "Naruto, as usual you're the most surprising shinobi of Konoha. Your affinities are wind, earth and water, meaning you might have a bloodline expansion. You more than likely will also be able to use ice, like Haku-san would like the first Hokage, and possibly something that combines earth and wind. Now before you get all excited like I know you will, listen to what I have to say. Training elemental affinities can take years to pull off and even decades to master. I'm sure it took Sasuke a long time to learn how to use fire." He looked at the Uchiha boy who nodded and said, "Yeah, it did. I spent years during the academy trying to learn it. It was a rite of passage for the Uchiha clan. It took about a year to be able to manifest the fire chakra and then another year to actually learn my first technique." "Sasuke-kun is so cool," Sakura said with hearts in her eyes. Naruto's jaw dropped in exasperation. "Naruto, you have real gift. While Haku-san has a limit, yours is stronger than his and more than likely will be passed on to your children. I would first though learn how to control one element, and then work on your second. Haku would be the perfect instructor for this training. Sasuke, I want you to work with Sakura on how to learn the basics of fire chakra, and Sakura, pay attention, since fire chakra can burn you easily. I have to report to the Hokage, but we'll be back, so begin your training in elemental chakra," Kakashi said and then disappeared. Haku walked Naruto over to the stream and said, "First I want you to touch the water and push some chakra into it." Naruto did so, but nothing appeared to happen. She smiled warmly and then said, "I want you to try to pull the water back to your hand. Forget about the chakra." He lifted his hand from the water, and the water began to bob up towards his hand. He smiled and looked at Haku, only for the glob of water to fall back into the stream. "Ah, I lost it," Naruto said in a dejected tone. Haku giggled at this, but then said, "Play with it, and don't worry if it doesn't always respond to you. That is how I learned how to work with water as a child." She then turned to Sasuke and said, "You need to have more patience than you would with an Uchiha, Sasuke-san. She might not understand, so explain it to her." Sasuke scowled, but did what he was told. Kakashi knocked on the door of the Hokage and waited for permission to enter. The door opened and the Hokage's old teammates, the elders, left the room both with scowls on their faces. He bowed to the elders who seemed to now notice the Jounin, and continued down the hall, away from the office. Kakashi entered the room, closed the door and asked, "Problems?" Hiruzen chuckled and replied, "Nothing I can't handle." "So what brings you here, Kakashi? Not another one of Naruto's pranks, I hope." "No, but he is the one that I wanted to talk to you about though," Kakashi replied in a serious tone. Sarutobi's featured hardened and he asked, "What is the problem?" Kakashi sighed and then said, "Not really a problem, for me or Haku maybe, but for you it might be a big one." "Do you know what Naruto's elemental affinities are?" Sarutobi raised an eyebrow and replied, "No, and why would you be checking affinities so soon after they just graduated?" "And did you say affinities, as in more than one?" "Yes, I did. As for why, well, Sasuke knows fire, while my other students don't know any elemental techniques," Kakashi explained. "Yes, but that still doesn't answer my question," Hiruzen said almost angrily. Kakashi took a deep breath and then said, "Either the Kyuubi is playing games or Naruto has a bloodline expansion. His affinities are wind, water and earth." Sarutobi looked at the Jounin in awe. The boy they had barely protected might have one of the most sought-after genetic mutations in the elemental nations. This would also prove problematic, in that the council would have to be informed about this. But he could put that off until he had performed the marriage ceremony for Naruto and Haku. He knew that he had put a lot on the girl's plate, but he was sure that she would pull through. He then asked, "How is Haku holding out?" "I'm sure that he will happy when he can spend some time with Kikyo-sensei." Naruto stood there soaked, while Haku also was wet, but not to the same extent. Both wore wide grins on their faces. Haku smiled warmly and said, "Naruto-kun, you have the basics for water manipulation. Now we need to work on working it into techniques." Sakura huffed and said, "That's not fair, he's already getting water down and I'm still trying to figure out how to change my chakra, so that I can breathe fire." Sasuke sighed, but said, "You finally are applying yourself. I'm impressed. Now if you don't want Naruto to get ahead of you, feel the heat in your lungs, as you push the chakra into it. Now exhale." Sakura exhaled and Sasuke was impressed. The girl had heated the air in her lungs quite a bit, not enough to create fire, but she had made more progress than he had when he had learned to do fire techniques. He then said, "Very good, you've got the basics. Now we need to increase the chakra and the heat. You've done in a day what took me months to do, I'm impressed." Sakura promptly fainted at being complimented by Sasuke. Naruto fell over laughing, while Haku appeared to be giggling like a girl would. This was weird, but he didn't take much notice. He then asked, "What?" "I gave her a compliment, and she faints." Chapter 3. Moving forward. Over the next week Naruto was able to finally get water manipulation down and start to work on a technique. Haku had finally been able to go to sleep without crying at the end of the week. This made both of them happy. Now she believed that she could move on with her life and work on her life with Naruto. Haku has also convinced Naruto to get a new wardrobe. It nearly broke their finances, but he was happy and so was she. His pants were now black, but his jacket was camouflage consisting of burnt orange, black and gray. Haku had finally felt that her wounds were healed and was waiting for contact from Naruto's physician to clear her for work. Strength exercises, along with speed exercises, were done in the evening. This though ran into a snag when they found someone watching them train together. Haku had shed her normal battle kimono for a light shirt and form-fitting pants for tonight's training. Sweat was rolling off of both of them and had begun to cause the shirts to stick to their bodies. This would seem to a non-casual observer, say a shinobi, that she was actually a she instead of a he. Naruto had shed his coat for a white shirt with an orange leaf insignia on it. She had to admit that his physique was improving, but he still looked like a nearly starved kid he had for the last couple weeks. Haku suddenly felt a presence in the bushes and created an ice saman. She looked in the direction of the presence, and threw it in such a way that it would either graze the person, or it would just miss them. They both heard an eat from where the saman had gone into the bushes. "Come out and show yourself or we'll come in after you," Naruto exclaimed. A blushing girl in a baggy coat and black paints came out of the bushes. It took a moment for Naruto to recognize her, but it hit him that it was Hyuga Hinata from the academy. "Sorry, Naruto-kun," she said meekly, while Naruto walked closer. Haku had gathered her kimono and had put it on. She then moved towards the two. "Why were you spying on us?" Haku asked pointedly. Hinata immediately put her hands at her side and bowed deeply. She then said, "I'm sorry, please forgive me." Naruto stopped his approach when he saw tears fall from Hinata's eyes. He then asked, "What's wrong, Hinata?" Haku got over her anger quickly and began to observe the girl. Hinata straightened and then replied, "I was watching Naruto-kun." She then began to press her index fingers together and look around. "Naruto-kun, what is her full name?" Haku asked calmly. "Hyuga Hinata, why?" he asked. "As in, the heir to the Hyuga clan?" Haku asked and Naruto shrugged, while Hinata turned her head, but nodded to the question. Haku then smirked and asked, "Do you like Naruto-kun?" Naruto turned to Haku and was about to ask a question, when he saw Haku point at Hinata. He turned to see Hinata's eyes wider than he thought anyone's eyes could be. Ha then asked, "Do you like me, Hinata?" Her mouth opened and nothing came out, but her head began to nod. Naruto would have laughed if he was sure that doing that would break the girl's heart. Haku then spoke up and asked, "Would you like to date Naruto-kun?" This was the straw that broke the camel's back. She turned bright red and fainted. Naruto ran to the girl's side, but Haku said, "She does like you and would like to date you, Naruto-kun." "But why me?" "I know we have two and I accept that you want to," Naruto said. "I would wait until she wakes up and ask her, or maybe I should ask her, since you're just a little blunt," Haku said with a snicker. Hinata smelled sweat, mixed with ramen scent. She smiled, thinking that she was dreaming that Naruto was holding her. Her eyes fluttered open, but she then saw a beautiful girl and Naruto both doting on her. She immediately tried to sit up, but was stopped by both of the others. "Naruto-kun," she said quietly, "what do you think of Haku?" Naruto asked. "She's pretty, Naruto-kun," Hinata answered. "So you can tell that I'm a girl?" Haku asked. Hinata nodded and replied, "The way you walk, your figure, and with the white shirt sticking to you. It wasn't hard to tell that you're female." "So you're with Naruto-kun?" Her face saddened at the question. Haku's face furrowed into a frown, but she then replied, "Naruto-kun doesn't have a choice of being with me, but he could still be with you also. I'm his servant and consort, so there is no way to get around that. If you would like you can have a relationship with him, but it won't be easy, since you're the heir to the Hyuga family, while Naruto-kun will be the head of the Uzumaki family. I cannot and will not stop him from having relationships with girls that love him. I give you permission to date him if you want to. I do understand that having multiple wives can either be a curse or blessing. I have already discussed this with the Hokage and he said that, while having multiple wives or husbands for that matter while rare, they are not against the law or illegal in Konoha." Hinata's lower lip trembled and tears welled up in her eyes. Naruto became worried and said, "Don't cry, Hinata, I'll give you a chance if you want. Haku's nice and she won't hurt you and I'll do my best to try to go out on a date with you, Hinata." "Hinata? Haku-chan." Haku giggled and then she said, "You broke the poor girl. She fainted. I think that she is very attached to you. I would say that she is similar to how you were with Sakura-chan, but in her case she longs for you, but has problems expressing herself and with her confidence. That is the reason she was blushing and fainting. I think I should deal with her until she can get the stamina to deal with you. We need to find out if this is a crush, or if she will truly love you." Love me?" Naruto asked. Haku giggled and gently caressed his face with her hand. "Yes, Naruto-kun, love. I know it is hard to believe that people will love you, but understand that we don't always have control of how we feel about others. If nothing else, you will get a great friend out of her. If it turns out to be love, she would make a good wife for you." Naruto felt Hinata's head hit his leg, just after he heard her let out an eep. Naruto's side and said, "Don't tell me she fainted again." Haku giggled and nodded. The next 10 minutes were spent waiting for Hinata to finally wake up. After that Naruto began to spar with the clone, while Haku and Hinata discussed how she felt, and why she felt that way. Haku concluded that for now it was a heavy crush, but it could lead to love, but she also noted admiration from the Hyuga girl and liked that quality. She concluded that Hinata wasn't quite ready to pursue a relationship with Naruto yet, other than a friendship. They could date, but they would also have to clear it with her father. This of course brought out more problems for Hinata and left Haku pondering about this village and how their thought processes worked. Naruto and Haku escorted Hinata home and set up a meeting with Hayashi for some time in the future. They then headed home and took a shower together. They then soaked in the tub together. Naruto was laying back into Haku, who was playing with his hair. She discussed with Naruto that she liked the girl and would not stop him from pursuing her as a second prospective wife. She also warned him of having multiple wives, especially if they didn't get along. This annoyed Naruto, but only slightly. He had noticed his feelings for Sakura were beginning to wane. He attributed it to his blossoming feelings for Haku, the way Sakura was acting towards him, and the revelation that Hinata had feelings towards him. He didn't really know what to think about it, but he knew that Haku would help him through it. He enjoyed the time that he spent with Haku, and was feeling more at ease with her. He chuckled at the thought of how in the middle of the week a makeout session had nearly become the consummation of their marriage. She had suggested that they bathe together to alleviate the sexual tension, since he wasn't experienced. His age played a factor in it, so did her being the older of the two. She wanted to lead her master, and not get them into trouble. He felt sort of bad and happy that he rose and then fell to the occasion. Haku, while disappointed, had also told him that she was happy that they hadn't done it yet. She wanted to talk to the doctor first. They also discussed how they would deal with Hayashi. There was a knock on the door early the next morning. Naruto groggily got up and answered it in his boxers. He found a giggling woman at the door, who he quickly realized who it was. He then exclaimed, "Hey Kikyo-sensei." She smiled warmly at the boy and asked, "May I come in?" "I'm here to see Haku-san and yourself, Naruto-kun." Naruto nodded and let her in. She looked around and smiled warmly. She then said, "So is the blushing bride in the bedroom?" Naruto looked at her in confusion and asked, "Why wouldn't she be?" "That's where we sleep." Kikyo's face became serious and she said, "I have to ask a personal question, Naruto-kun." He nodded and she then asked, "Have you two consummated the marriage yet?" Naruto blushed, but then replied, "We got close the other night, but no, we haven't. She and I are worried about how I was able to heal her. I used the Kyuubi's chakra to heal a Raikiri wound to the chest." Kikyo gasped, but then Naruto continued, "She was worried that it might affect her having our children, and she keeps on saying we're a little young to be having kids yet." Kikyo giggled and then said, "Yes, at 12 and barely out of puberty. My little Naruto-kun is growing up, but yes. You're too young to have children. Now I need both of you for this examination." Naruto walked into the bedroom followed by Kikyo. Naruto leaned over and kissed Haku on the cheek. This elicited "Just another 5 minutes, Naruto-kun." Naruto smirked, and then kissed her on the lips. Haku wrapped her arms around Naruto, and they deepened the kiss. Kikyo blushed, but said nothing. Haku finally broke the kiss and asked, "That was nice. Do you want to make love to me before I see the doctor?" Naruto gave her a chaste kiss and then replied, "She is right here and is ready for the exam." Haku's eyes sprung open, and she looked around. Seeing an older woman in a bedroom was shocking, but with Naruto being at ease with the woman, so would she. She then said, "Hello Kikyo-sensei. I'm Haku and Naruto-kun has told me a lot about you." Kikyo smirked and said, "I'm sure it was all the scary stuff, but it is a pleasure to meet you, Haku-san." Her features hardened and she said, "I need both of you to strip and lay on the bed. We can do it one at a time to spare you any embarrassed." She stopped when Naruto had shucked his boxers and jumped onto the bed. Haku removed her clothing, folded it, and put it on the nightstand. She blushed, but then said, "I see that you're at ease with each other. That will make it easier. Now Haku-chan, I'm going to do a deep scan. It might tingle, so don't be afraid. I need to see what type of damage exposure to the Kyuubi's chakra did to you." Haku nodded while she remained still on the bed. Kikyo did several hand seals and her hands began to glow a blue-green. She then ran her hands over Haku's body. She started at the head and moved down. She grimaced when she got to the scar on her chest, but said nothing. She ran her hands down each arm, then Haku's abdomen. She moved down Haku's body and finally stopped at the feet. She then moved back to Haku's chest and appeared to be doing a deeper examination. She then asked, "Haku-chan, can you take a deep breath and then let it out?" Naruto growled, while Haki giggled and he exclaimed, "Hey! I'm a man, a shinobi of the leaf." Kikyo smirked, patted his head and then said, "Why yes you are and it is your turn, big man." Naruto scowled, but watched as Kikyo's hand moved down his body, stopping above his. He scowled, but said nothing. She moved down his legs and then ended the technique. She then said, "You both can get dressed and then we will discuss my results in the living room." She left the room and closed the door behind them. A knock was heard at the front door and Naruto grew pale. Naruto and Haku quickly dressed. Naruto went with his new outfit for today. Naruto heard Sakura's voice and she asked, "Who are you?" He smirked and waited for a moment. He then heard Kikyo reply, "I'm the Uzumaki's personal physician. I came to check up on the injury of Haku-san and to do a check on Naruto-kun. So may I ask what you're doing here, Haruno-san?" "I was here to thank Haku-kun for helping me break the ice with Sasuke-kun," Sakura replied, but the happy shrill was evident. Naruto looked at an apologetic-looking Haku. Naruto rolled his eyes and then left through the open door. He chuckled internally when Sakura's face fell when she saw it was him, and not Haku. Naruto smiled and asked, So did you come to confess your love for me, Sakura-chan? Sakura recovered from Naruto's barb quickly and threw a punch at Naruto, while exclaiming, Naruto. Naruto dodged the initial punch, but then grabbed Sakura's arm on the second punch and quickly turned and pushed his hip into her. This caused her to become unbalanced and fly head over heels over his head. He didn't release his grip and allowed her to hit the couch full force. This caused the legs of the couch to buckle from the force, and the springs to break from their moorings in the wood in the couch. She let out a gruff exhalation when she hit. Naruto then said angrily, You attacked me in my own house. You keep coming over uninvited. We have the day off for Kami's sake. You know I really did like you, but the attacks have to stop. This is my sanctuary and I will not be attacked here. You know the Hokage used to post an ANBU to guard me when I was younger, to protect me from errant villagers? They stopped because of the ANBU, so they haven't bugged me here since. His anger seemed to grow with each statement. He continued, You've always hit me, even when there was no real reason other than for you to blow off some steam. I asked you if you want to play, you hit me and say no one would want to play with a baka like you. I asked you for a date, you hit me and say no one would want to go out with someone like you, especially when there's Sasuke-kun around. Well, let me give you some information. There are people who would like to go out with a person like me. By the way, what have you meant by a person like me? Sakura looked up at Naruto and saw that his eyes were still blue, but instead of normal pupils, they were now slits. She rolled onto the floor and began to scoot away from her angry teammate. This is what I meant. My mother said that you were a monster and to avoid you. Now I know what she means. Monster? You call me a monster? I'm not the one who is abusive. A monster wouldn't try to do everything for someone, no matter how badly they treated them, Naruto said angrily, but also his eyes had turned purple and the killing intent was rising. Haku quickly came up behind Naruto and wrapped her arms around him and whispered into his ear. Naruto visibly relaxed and his eyes turned back to their normal blue. Haku then faced Sakura and said, While I'm glad I could help you with Sasuke-san, I'm afraid that you'll have to leave. You've upset Naruto-kun and given his feelings for you, which I might add you have stomped on, more than likely for the last time. He is quite hurt right now by your actions. I was able to calm him down, but realized that he has been alone most if not all his life. Hated by those he is now entrusted to protect. All he wanted from you was some acknowledgement, and a possible date, no matter what the outcome. Sakura looked on and tilted her head and then noticed the tears falling from Naruto's face. He still wore a look of anger, but she then saw the look of hurt in his eyes. She gasped and realized what she had been doing. She slowly got up and started to walk closer to Naruto, but halted when he began to growl. Kikiyo cleared her throat, getting the attention of everyone and said, While it is charming that you want to apologize to Naruto-kun, he isn't in the receiving mood right now and I do have other things to do. This is a clan issue and I will have to ask you to leave. Clan? Naruto isn't from a clan, Sakura said in confusion. Actually he is from an old and prestigious clan, the Uzumaki. The swirl pattern you see on the back of most Jounin and Chunin vests along with the one on Naruto's arm are the symbol of the Uzumaki. So great was their sacrifice, that Konoha decided to acknowledge them with incorporating their clan's seal into that of our uniforms. You see, the Hidden Eddy village sacrificed itself to help Konoha. Now, enough of the history lesson, Sakura, please leave, Kikiyo said authoritatively. Sakura nodded and went out the door, while closing it behind her. Kikiyo then touched the couch and it collapsed. She smiled worriedly and said, Sorry, but we need to talk. Naruto sighed and leaned his head against Haku's, who smiled at the touch. He then said, We can talk at the table, Kikiyo-sensei. The trio moved to the table and each took a seat. Haku reached out and took Naruto's hand that was on the table, both to reassure him and to do the same for herself. Kikiyo sighed and then began. I can report that Haku-chan is in near perfect health and can do full training with you, Naruto-kun. I would also advise that if you two decide to have sex within the next week I would either use contraception or a contraceptive technique. Naruto looked at her in confusion and asked, What's contraception? Haku smirked, but then replied, It is an attempt to prevent me from becoming pregnant. There are several methods. A condom, pills, and then there are shinobi techniques. She then saw more confusion in his face, so she continued, When we have sex, you release sperm and without something to block it from getting to my egg then a child could be born. Naruto's face became fearful and he asked, Even on the first time? Kikiyo replied, If the conditions are right, one time is all that is needed. Also even using contraceptives doesn't always work. Condoms are a barrier to block sperm from entering the female's body entirely, but they sometimes leak. Pills take time and don't always stop ovulation. Chakra-based techniques are on the same level as our condoms, but allow for you not to have the barrier. It is about 95% effective or higher depending on the chakra control of the female using the technique, but there is one for the male, but I discourage it. Naruto and Haku looked at her and he asked, Why? Kikiyo frowned and then replied, It will kill all the sperm in the male for about 72 hours, but you will be in pain for about 24. It requires chakra to be focused in the testicles and if you have horrible control you could sterilize yourself. Both Naruto and Haku paled. Kikiyo smirked and continued, Now you see why I don't recommend it. I believe that Naruto-kun would make it so that he would end the line, so to speak, and I'm sure that Haku-chan wouldn't be happy with that. I recommend that you use the female technique, Haku. I will teach it to you tomorrow afternoon when you come to the hospital for your fifth shift. I was informed that you didn't want people to know that you're female just yet. Haku nodded to the statement, but Kikyo continued, you will have to take your role of a female nurse within a week, so I would learn the technique, bag our sweet Naruto-kun and be done with it, since at that point you would be untouchable. Also the Hokage told me that both of you will be at the meeting next week of the Council of Clans and the full council afterwards. You both will have an observatory role there, since neither of you are Jounin. If you would like I could sit as your clan's representative at the meeting. Naruto looked at Haku who nodded. Kikyo smiled and then said, so now that has been decided, I will leave you to play, but no sex without a condom today and tomorrow after you learn the technique you can go at it until you're blue in the face. Both Naruto and Haku blushed. Kikyo put her hand on each of the couple's hands and then said, while you're not ready yet to be parents, I believe that you will be good ones. I also think that it was both silly and very cunning of Sarutobi to do this to the two of you. She then smiled warmly and asked, I hear that you have a bloodline, Naruto-kun. With Haku-chan you can pass the ice down and even possible the wood line down to your children, and we would see the re-emergence of the Senju or at least a similar line to the first Hokage. Well, have a good day, kids, and don't have any kids for a few years. I would recommend that Haku-chan not have children until she is 18 or so, to make sure that she has finished growing into the beautiful young woman that she was intended. Haku blushed, but Naruto said, I think she's beautiful right now. This caused Haku to turn bright red. Kikyo stood and headed towards the door. She left quietly, not being noticed by Naruto who had been literally tackled by Haku, who didn't seem to want Naruto to take a breath because of her kissing him. The makeout session continued for a little while and even got them to move to the bedroom. Haku was able to finally control herself when she had taken off her shirt and Naruto was kissing and sucking on her breast. Naruto-kun, we need to stop, she said, nearly out of breath. Naruto looked up into her brown eyes and asked, why? Because if we don't we will consummate our marriage and I more than likely will get pregnant. I'm sorry, it's my fault. I was just overjoyed that you thought I was beautiful and I felt the urge and well one thing led to another. We can do it either tomorrow night, or we can wait. It is up to you, master, she explained, but he could tell that there was longing in her eyes. She would continue, but knew that they had to stop or there would be problems. Naruto nodded and kissed her on the lips. They then put their clothes back on. The rest of the day both wore light blushes and smiles that wouldn't quit. They trained lightly that evening with Hinata, who agreed to talk to her father about a meeting. She knew that it would take time for her to win Naruto's heart. Haku and Naruto praised her on her progress on her working on her taijutsu. Haku had a few pointers and Hinata took them to heart. She really began to like Haku, and her feelings for Naruto deepened. The thing that disturbed her was when Naruto began an explanation that brought fear into her heart. Hinata, I won't lie to you. Sakura and I had a fight today, and I think I'm falling in love with Haku-chan. Which is good since we're getting married in a way we're already married. This sent a chill down Hinata's spine. Haku saw this and reached out to the girl and gave her a hug. She then said, it's not that we really had a choice, but if afterwards and your father agrees, I will not oppose you and Naruto dating. Since you're younger than him, I will not allow you to marry him until you're older, say 16. I know it is a little over 3 years for you, but if things go well then it will be worth it. Naruto-kun appreciates your feelings towards him, and he is still trying to understand feelings. But since he really didn't have any way to understand relationships, he wouldn't be opposed to marrying you if it works out. I also say that we would get along well together, unlike Sakura-san and I. Please get us that meeting with your father before the clan meeting. If not, then your chances will diminish. Hinata looked into the girl's eyes that was holding her and nodded. I can still be with Naruto-kun, she thought to herself. She wasn't sure what type of relationship it would be, but she still had a chance. She also noticed that Naruto's mannerism had improved. For this she was appreciative of Haku for helping her Naruto. She wanted to jump into his arms and into his bed to prove her feelings for the boy, but didn't have the confidence to do such a thing. She thought that using Haku to help her and Naruto to help her with her confidence. She then asked, I'm not very good and am weak. I need your help to get the meeting with my father. Will you come with me? Naruto scowled and replied, sure, we'll come with you, but I know that you're strong. This brought a smile to the Hyuga girl. Naruto got up and helped both Haku and Hinata to their feet. Haku then said happily, such a gentleman. Naruto kissed her on the cheek and the trio left the training grounds for the Hyuga compound. Hinata led them to the entrance, but found her cousin standing there. The boy scowled at Hinata and then at the Uzumaki. Niji then said, I was just dispatched to fetch you, Hinata-sama. You are out past curfew. Your father and the council will be most displeased. Naruto attempted to imitate the look on Niji's face, but not having the sour disposition, he failed utterly. Sorry man, but you had it coming, Naruto said to the angry Hyuga boy. I know who you are, Dobe, but do not understand why you're here, Niji said angrily. Naruto straightened out his outfit and then said in a serious tone, I am Uzumaki Naruto, head of the Uzumaki clan. I am here to speak with Hayashi-sama on inter-clan business that isn't your business. Take yourself and your girl away from here, before I remove you, Niji threatened. Naruto waved as if it didn't matter, but then said, if it gets to Hayashi-sama that you turn me away you might be in trouble. Also we have the clan heir inviting me to see her father, and you say that you're going to evict me, even before I step foot on the premises? Niji nodded and replied, that is right. I know that you're the pariah and prankster of the village. I will not allow someone like you to sully the Hyuga clan. His eyes were closed for the second sentence. He opened his eyes to see both Hinata and Haku giggle in his direction. He turned his head to see Naruto looking at his butt. He then asked, what do you think you're doing? Naruto cupped his chin and replied, I'm not sure how you can have a bigger stick pushed up your butt than Sasuke team, but it appears to be the case. Haku began to laugh heartily at this. Hinata couldn't help but begin to laugh. Niji by now was becoming quite mad, as he chased Naruto around in a circle, in an attempt to confront the boy for insulting him. Will you stop moving? He asked angrily. Naruto continued to both avoid being in front of Niji and also the strikes that the boy was throwing at him. Naruto replied happily, not going to happen. Just starting to get Sakura to stop hitting me and I'm not going to have you replace her. You are a guy, right? Hinata then said while laughing, that was mean to say to my cousin, Naruto-kun. Niji began to stumble and finally fell on his butt before Naruto would actually stand in front of the boy. Naruto then said, while that was fun, don't ever insult me or those that I care about, or you'll get worse than a dizzy spell and land on your ass. Attention became centered behind them when a male voice asked, what is going on here? Hinata stopped laughing and looked down. She then said, Father, these are the Uzumaki and they would like to speak with you. The man bore an imposing visage, but nodded and said, come with me. He led the trio through several hallways into a room. He opened the door and ushered them into the room. He closed the door after them and then took a seat behind a table with several scrolls laid out on it. He then said, I'm a busy man, so what do the Uzumaki want with me and my clan? Naruto swallowed hard, but Haku spoke. Hayashi-sama, the Uzumaki wish your permission to court your daughter, she said authoritatively. Why would I allow my daughter to date, and then eventually marry a girl? He asked, while looking directly at Haku. Naruto scratched the back of his head and replied, well, it's not Haku-chan that wants to date Hinata-chan. It's me. He eyed the boy with a glare that Naruto could have sworn would kill the Kyuubi. He then said, I see. Naruto sighed and said, I'm not too good with words and am terrible at politics, so I will just come out and say what I mean. Hayashi nodded and said, I prefer that, but we are shinobi and being able to see deceit is part of what we do. What is the reason you wish to court my daughter? I understand that this girl is your servant. Naruto thought for a minute and replied, Haku is my servant, but in actuality I'm only asking to date Hinata-chan to find out if we even have a chance together. I know that she likes me and I think of her as a friend, but want to know if it can be more. I'm not good with personal skills, mainly because of the village and how they treat me, because of the Kyuubi. If it is only to date my daughter I will allow it for now, but dating is all you can do. You may go on missions with her team, but you must sleep separately. I don't want my daughter to give me grandchildren too soon. It will also give her time to focus on her training and not so much on her stalking of yourself. Naruto looked confusingly at Hinata, who just blushed. Naruto also then said, I must also inform you that I am being forced to marry Haku-chan here. You say too much, but I figure that it is the Hokage behind such a move. What is so special about you, girl? Hayashi asked. I am a Hayatan user, Haku replied. Hayashi nodded and then said, I will monitor her progress in her training. If she begins to slack off or start to have problems I will discontinue your relationship with my daughter. I know that it is her wish, and I want to give her some happiness. I know the laws that allow for polygamy, which I'm not fond of. I will, like I said, allow it for now. Naruto then said, I also possess a bloodline expansion, which could include both ice and wood. That would be an asset. If after time you and my daughter were to have children, and I mean if, I would like for some of them to marry back into the Hyuga. Is that acceptable? He asked sternly. Naruto nodded and then asked, so you don't have a problem with me being married to Haku and also dating your daughter? Hayashi took a deep breath and then replied, it doesn't make me happy, but it would also help me keep the elders off my back when it comes to Hinata. While she is improving, she isn't progressing fast enough for the elders. If I say that she has a suitor they will back off and it will give her time to improve. He then looked sternly at Hinata and said, for this to work, you will have to begin to beat your sister in your matches. Your style is too timid right now. Knowing Uzumaki-san, he might help you be able to surprise your sister and begin to win some of the matches. He then looked at Naruto and said, she might be able to help you with your chakra problem. As for the possible relationship I prefer monogamous ones, but we are shinobi and our lives can be short. I hope this will work out for both of us, Uzumaki-san. It was nice to meet you, Haku-san, and I wish you luck on the Chunin exams. Now if you'll excuse me I have some work to get to. Also try not to tease Niji too much. Good day, Naruto-san, Haku-san. Naruto and Haku bowed, but also noticed the frown on Hayashi's face. Not sure why he was frowning, they left the room quickly with Hinata in tow. Haku immediately said, we need you to join us in our after-team exercises, Hinata-chan. That way you can be ready to become a Chunin and impress your father and these elders, whoever they are. Hinata nodded and replied, I think with your help I can do it. They are some of the older members of the main branch of the family. She then escorted them out of the compound and agreed to meet them the next day after team practice and the mission they would be doing. The meeting the next day with Kikyo went fine and she learned the contraceptive jutsu. The after-team practice went well until Hinata took off her jacket and Naruto turned bright red. Haku sighed and continued to work with the pair while Naruto either held back or was distracted by Hinata wearing a tight, wet black shirt that showed off her developing assets. Hinata explained that she was distraught by her appearance, but Naruto quickly told her that he liked it and quickly covered his mouth. Haku smirked and called him a pervert, but didn't seem to be angry about it. The trio parted with Naruto carrying a tired Hinata on his back to the Hyuga compound. Hinata whispered something to Naruto, but he couldn't quite hear it. Naruto for some reason was restless that evening. Nothing Haku did could calm him down. Even a really intense makeout session didn't seem to calm him. He was too wound up to try to meditate. Neither one could figure out what was bothering the boy. Haku finally sat him down and asked point blank, "What has got you so wound up? Is it dating Hinata and having to consummate the marriage within the next little bit?" Naruto looked around, but finally nodded. He looked at her with pleading eyes and asked, "How am I supposed to be faithful to you, since we will be married and we have to do that? I don't even really know how to do that. I mean, I have an idea, but not really." Haku sighed and then asked, "You remember what I look like without any pants?" He nodded in response, so she continued, "You remember when I took off my top and rubbed against you the other morning?" He again nodded, but blushed profusely. She giggled, but then said, "Let me put it this way. I will be taking what I was rubbing against out of your pants, and putting in me where I was rubbing it against myself. Depending on if I still have my hymen, it might hurt. If it does, then we take it slowly. If you release early, we do it again until you release in me. Don't worry, Naruto-kun, we have time. I really do care about you and am not worried if you take Hinata-chan as a second lover or wife, she's nice." Naruto's eyes looked away and he turned beet red. Haku looked at him in confusion, but then noticed him holding his crotch. She then asked, "You have an urge you don't know how to deal with, don't you?" Naruto looked back at Haku and worriedly nodded. Haku began to giggle, but then moved to the boy and kissed him. He shuddered at the kiss and began to shake. She touched his cheek and asked, "You're scared and nervous, aren't you?" "Uh-huh," he replied. Haku grabbed his hand and touched what he was hiding. She raised an eyebrow, but didn't say anything. She gently guided him into the bedroom. She then kissed him and felt him shake from nervousness. She was also shaking. She looked deeply into his eyes and said, "We don't have to do this right now, but if you want to then we can." She smiled as she saw his resolve grow. He nodded and said, "We need to do it sooner or later, better soon than later." Haku smiled and wrapped him in a hug and then kissed him deeply. Naruto looked at her in confusion and then looked at the calendar. It was October 10th, and he blushed. "You planned this, didn't you?" he asked accusatorily. Haku rolled her eyes and replied seductively, "Maybe." She then pulled him out of bed and led him into the shower. They cleaned up and got ready for their day. Haku went off to the hospital and Naruto went off to find his team. Haku met with Kikyo, and had her scanned to make sure that the jutsu worked properly. Kikyo smirked and said, "You planned it on his birthday. You give him a present that no one other than yourself can top on a day that haunts him. You're a sweetheart. The jutsu held and you're not pregnant, but I would keep it up until you have your period, each day to make sure that you don't get pregnant. How is the training going otherwise?" Haku smiled at the change in subjects and replied, "He is coming along nicely. His control is getting better, and he can actually make ice. We found a weird way for him to train though. He is using shadow clones to work on his control and on his elemental manipulation. He has water and wind down, but is struggling with earth, but without anyone to teach him it is hard going. We let his clones experiment. He is also getting the fundamental of ice down." Kikyo smirked and said, "Sounds like you'll be a good teacher. Now that you've consummated the relationship, we need to talk to the Hokage and finish the ceremony in the paperwork at least." Haku nodded and the pair headed to the Hokage's tower. Naruto was sweating, but had a smile on his face. The spar with Sakura was going fine and he actually felt he was going easy on her. He would block her punches and tell her what she did wrong, according to what Haku had taught him. Sakura was finally getting frustrated and exhausted, but what was annoying her was that Naruto kept creating clones to fight against Sasuke and the real him was still sparring with her. She, after a talk with Kakashi, understood how much chakra a shadow clone took and that Naruto was, like he said, a river to her small trickle of chakra. She finally missed and collapsed on the ground in front of Naruto. Naruto stepped forward and offered her his hand. She noticed that he was smiling for no real reason, but something seemed to have changed with the boy from the other day. Naruto seemed more relaxed and happier than he was normally. She took the hand and asked, "What's going on, Naruto? You're never this easygoing, even for you." Naruto shrugged as he pulled her to standing, and replied, "Things happen." She noticed the faraway look in his eyes, but then shrugged and chalked it up to him being Naruto. She then noticed a girl in shinobi gear sitting under the tree with their sensei, but the girl looked strikingly like Haku. "So congratulations are in order, Mrs. Uzumaki?" Kakashi asked Haku teasingly. Haku nodded while watching Naruto spar with both Sakura and Sasuke. He seems much more relaxed and able to focus today. He is even giving Sasuke a run for his money. "Any jutsu I should know about?" he asked in a relaxed tone. "No, not yet, but he does have wind and water manipulation down. We also found that he can use shadow clones to train. We are taking that easy so as to not aggravate his tenant," she replied. "So you are also helping out the Hyuga heiress?" he asked while he watched Naruto help Sakura up. Yes, she is a good person and will be helpful in Naruto-kun's growth. It would also be a good political move for us to be aligned with the Hyuga. I don't see any other girls knocking down the door right now, and I have say about who he will eventually be with. Hinata-chan is a good girl and will make a good wife. I can already see that Hayashi has given up on her, but still wants her to succeed. She will never be a true heir in his eyes, so if he can use her to further his clan then he is all for it, Haku explained. Rather cold, but coming from an ice user it might be expected, Kakashi said playfully. Haku sighed and said, Zabuza instilled in me some understanding of politics, so I've done what is best for my master and husband. Kakashi wondered if the Hokage had created a monster or a good thing with Haku and Naruto. Time would decide that for the both of them. Chapter 4 I Hate Politics. A couple days later in Naruto's apartment, Naruto sighed yet again. Haku scowled and said, Stop it, Naruto-kun. You need to dress appropriately for this meeting. Naruto sighed and replied, Yeah, I know, but why do we have to wear this stuff? He motioned to the kimono that Haku was helping him into. His kimono was basic white, but had an Uzumaki swirl on the right breast, but it also had a Yuki snowflake and a Hyuga flame on the left arm. Haku giggled and replied, A semi-formal kimono is appropriate for the council meeting and ascension of our clan to the clan council. Kikyo-sensei will be there too. She is our guide for this meeting, since either of us are Jonin. Naruto chuckled and said, Who would have guessed that my doctor was also an Uzumaki? Haku giggled and said, Yes, it is fortuitous. Naruto looked at his wife in confusion. Haku explained, It is fortunate that she is or we would have other problems. Naruto asked as he looked at Haku in confusion, Like what? Haku took on a serious look and replied, Well, if she wasn't a member of the clan then she could forward her own interests instead of the clan's, and we could do little other than complain to the Hokage and hope that we could replace her with someone more suitable. She finished with the kimono and pushed Naruto towards the door. She then continued, We need to go to the meeting and not be late, since it will be looked badly upon us. Naruto and Haku met up with Kikyo outside of the Hokage's tower, who wore a similar kimono to the couple. Kikyo smiled, bowed and then asked, How may I serve my clan head and his lovely wife? Naruto blushed and replied, You can stand up and stop all that formal stuff. Kikyo giggled and replied, As you wish, Lord Naruto-sama. Her demure became dark, and she glared behind the couple. She then asked, What can I do for you, Danzo-sama? Naruto and Haku turned to find an aged shinobi who wore bandages on the right side of his face. His arm appeared to be in a sling or missing. He looked down at the Uzumaki couple and said, I would like to have a word with Uzumaki-san, Kikyo-sensei. Kikyo immediately moved in front of the couple and said, I not allow you to taint them the way that you have Yakushi-sama. The man smiled and Naruto began to not trust the man. Whatever do you mean, Kikyo-sensei? Danzo asked in an innocent tone. She slashed her hand across her body in a downward motion and declared, I will not have you poisoning their minds like as did with Yakushi-sama. That discussion will be for a later date. We will be late for the meeting if you impede us any further. Danzo stepped aside and motioned with his cane that they could pass, but also said, You would best watch what you say, Uzumaki-san, for it could get you into real trouble. Kikyo gathered up an angry Naruto and an agitated Haku and quickly rushed them past the man, while she could only glare at the man. After they entered the building he said to no one in particular, Keep an eye on them. He then followed the Uzumaki into the building. The Uzumaki entered the council chamber and sat in the indicated chairs in the middle of the room. Naruto began to fidget with his kimono only for Haku to grab his hands and then place them on his lap. She then took his left hand into her own and smiled at him warmly. Naruto seemed to visibly relax. This raised a couple eyebrows in the chamber. There was a murmur around the council chambers. After a moment the elders and Danzo entered the room. Naruto noticed the glare from Kikyo that was pointed at Danzo. He wondered what would cause his doctor and cousin to be so angry with someone. He was interrupted in his thoughts when the Hokage entered the room and took a seat at the head table. Sarutobi looked around the room and sighed when he saw the looks on those of the council. He took a deep breath and said, Let the council come to order and the petition for clan status in Konoha of the Uzumaki. A man with dark hair and an angular jaw scowled and stated, I would object, just to deny the boy any type of status other than what he already holds. We already know how you feel, Kai, but under what grounds do you oppose? Nara Shikaka asked in a bored tone. He and his clansmen are only two, Kai replied with a satisfied look on his face. Sarutobi sighed and stated, The Uzumaki are a clan and there are several around the elemental nations, scattered by the wars. Even Mito-sama was an Uzumaki, Kai grumbled and then crossed his arms. He wore an angry look and replied, I still oppose it even if Mito-sama was an Uzumaki. Naruto began to stand, but was stopped when Kikyo turned and gave him a glare. She then stood and turned to Kai. She then said, I Uzumaki Kikyo, sitting in Naruto-sama's stead, since he is only a genin. The esteemed Uzumaki would like to establish our clan home here in Konoha, since our homeland of Yuzushiogakure was destroyed and we were assured help by the Eternal Alliance. We ask in the name in the Eternal Alliance that was offered by the Senju clan and by Konohagakure itself. This was assured by the marriage of Mito Uzumaki-sama and Hiroshima Senju-sama. Need I remind Councilmember Kai of the promise made to my clan when members of my family moved here? Kai wore a bored look upon his face and waved a finger in a circular motion. Yes, we are all aware of what Tobarama-sama agreed to with the help of Mito-sama. He said that Konoha would accept anyone from Yuzushigaku was welcome here in Konoha, and if they wanted to establish a clan holding they could. I don't see why we should. There are only 2 of them left, and it doesn't make sense to have a clan of only 2. Naruto began to laugh and then said, then remove team from being a clan. Kai glared at Naruto and said, who is this team that you're referring to? Naruto smiled and replied, why Sasuke Uchiha, a clan of 1. Kai and several members scoffed at this and he said, he is more important than you ever could be, you urchin. Naruto glared at the man, but Kikyo held up her hand and stayed his anger. Council member Kai, you would say that one genin is more important than another, and you would block our clan from its rightful place in this village compared to a child who can't even properly help the clans it is supposed to watch over? Kai stood up and glared at Kikyo and replied angrily, yes, anything to keep that boy from acquiring power. Naruto looked both worried and surprised by the outburst, but then clenched his fist and began to stand, but was held down by Haku. She then stood and put her hands together. She then smiled sweetly and said, you, esteemed councilman Kai, will treat my husband with some respect or you will not be able to continue your duties as councilman. The room began to cool and Naruto began to smile. Sarutobi sighed and said, enough, those who oppose the Uzumaki clan entry as a clan will not be on the council anymore if you continue to oppose. Now Naruto-kun, could you please raise the temperature in here? It's getting a little cold for my old bones. Naruto nodded and the temperature began to rise. Hayashi stood up and said, the Hyuga clan will house the Uzumaki clan until they have a compound of their own. Sarutobi nodded and replied, that would be very commendable of the Hyuga, thank you. Hayashi nodded and sat back down. Sarutobi clapped his hands together and said, now on to other business. The rest of the day was filled with dull business of the village and information about the upcoming Chunin exams. Naruto surprised everyone in the room except for Haku with being quiet and attentive during the meeting. Haku knew that the boy was figuring out how to get even with Councilman Kai. If nothing else, Naruto was a master planner when it came to traps and revenge, non-lethal of course. The meeting finally got out and Uzumaki clan was confronted by an angry Team 7. Kakashi asked, Naruto, why weren't you at the team meeting today? Naruto replied, I sent a clone to tell you that I was in a council meeting. I know you got the message. Kakashi nodded and replied, yes, but that will do, Hataki-san. Hayashi broke into the conversation. He then continued, he also has duties to his clan and to the village. He should be available tomorrow. The council apologizes for any inconvenience. Sakura balled her fist and moved to hit Naruto while saying, you screwed up practice today. She was stopped by a saban to the throat and an angry Hyuga holding the fist. Hayashi looked at Kakashi and said, you have some work to do with how this one treats a clan head. Sakura looked at Naruto in awe and asked quietly, clan head? How can he be clan head? Hayashi replied, by being the son of the Red Habanero, Uzumaki Kushina. Kikyo is right now his advisory to the council, but Naruto is the head of the clan. Sakura counted on her hand and said, but that only makes 2 people for a clan. How can you have a clan when there is only 2 people? Naruto chuckled and replied, when a clan has been around a while and is the eternal ally of Konoha. Also there is a clan of 1, and you're fixated on him, so don't go complaining about a small clan. You also forgot about my wife. Sakura and Sasuke's eyes went wide and she asked, wife, what wife? Haku bowed and replied, I am Uzumaki Haku, a pleasure to meet you again. Sakura looked at back and forth between Naruto and Haku. Naruto chuckled lightly and said, I couldn't have planned a better prank if I tried, and the punchline was perfect. Sasuke glared at Haku and asked, I was beat by a girl. Fight me and prove you can beat me. I think it was a fluke. Haku looked at Naruto, who shook his head. She smiled and replied, I'm sorry, but my husband has forbidden it at this time. Maybe some other time we can spar. She emphasized spar. Kikyo sighed and said, as entertaining as this is, Naruto-sama, we need to prepare for our move to the Hyuga estate. Naruto nodded and the trio walked off. Kakashi smirked under his mask and said, now that was interesting. Sasuke glared at Kakashi and asked, how was that interesting? Kakashi smirked and disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Sakura turned to Sasuke and asked, you want to go out to lunch? Sasuke was already down the road and Sakura ran after Sasuke. Naruto and Haku were taking off their kimonos when there was a knock at the door. Naruto sighed and the couple shared a look as if to ask, really? Naruto sighed and walked to the door. He opened it to find Sasuke standing there, and Sakura just running up to the door. Naruto glared at Sasuke and asked, what do you want? Sasuke looked angry and replied, I want to fight her. Naruto rolled his eyes and then just shut the door. Sasuke's eyes went wide at his teammate just slamming the door in his face. Sakura was also in shock. Naruto returned to the bedroom and began to disrobe. Haku asked, who was it? Naruto scowled and replied, my esteemed teammates. He still wants to fight you. Haku giggled and said, that is too bad for him, since my husband has forbidden me from fighting him. She moved over and kissed him. Naruto accepted the kiss and wrapped her in a hug. They stood there for a minute until there was a pounding on the door. Haku grabbed a sundress and put it on. She then walked to the door and opened the door to find an angry Sasuke. What can I do for you, Uchiha-san? She asked in an annoyed voice. Sasuke glared at the young woman and said, you will fight me? Haku raised an eyebrow and said, my husband has said no, and he means no. Until the time that he authorizes me to spar with you, I am to avoid any clash with you. Now we have important things to do. If that is all, I bid you good day. She then closed the door with a slam. She then walked into the bedroom and began to help Naruto pack. They continued on even with the pounding on the door. After an hour they had finished packing their meager belongings and headed to the door. They found an angry Uchiha and Haruno. We've been knocking for an hour. Why didn't you answer? Sakura asked angrily. Naruto chuckled and replied, we were kind of busy. Sakura balled a fist, but then turned when she heard a voice. Naruto-kun, Haku-chan, we have come to take you to your new housing per our offer, Hinata declared. She glared at Sakura and Sasuke. She then asked Sasuke, Sakura, would please move as to not hinder our helping the Uzumaki clan to their new housing? Sasuke scowled, but moved out of the way. Sakura on the other hand moved to stand directly in front of Hinata. Hinata took a step back. Sakura smirked and said, we were here first and have to talk to Naruto, so don't get in the way. Hinata sighed and then turned to a boy whose scowl was deeper than Sasuke's. Hinata then asked, Niji Nizan, what can we do about this? I defer to your wisdom counsel. Niji raised an eyebrow, but then replied, Hayashi-sama said that we were to bring the Uzumaki to our compound. He did mention that if we were opposed, that we were allowed to use whatever force was necessary to bring them to the compound safely. He mentioned that there might be some opposition and that our clan's honor depended on them arriving safely. Sakura paled at the possibility of having to fight. She stepped back while Naruto and Haku began to direct some of the cadet members of the Hyuga clan in taking items from their apartment. They watched Naruto sigh as he locked the door after the final item was taken, but Sasuke said to Naruto just as he began to walk down the stairs, this isn't over Naruto. Naruto sighed and shook his head as he walked away with the Hyuga. Naruto and Haku smiled at room they had been given. While it was Spartan, it had a large futon along with a couple dressers and a desk. The couple began to unpack and fill the dressers with their stuff. The next day Naruto and Haku approached the bridge with his waiting teammates. Naruto and Haku then began to spar beside the bridge and on top of the water. Sasuke watched the pair intently, but then was surprised to see them pause and glare at Sasuke. Naruto ground his teeth while Haku said in an angry tone, do not use your Sharingan to copy our fighting style, or I might be inclined to remove your eyes. Sasuke grunted and replied, as if. Sakura looked between the pair and Sasuke in surprise. Suddenly Kakashi appeared and said, my little genin, I have submitted you to the Chunin exams. So what's happening? Haku sighed and replied, the Uchiha is attempting to steal clan techniques. We will not have it. I agreed to help Naruto-kun's team, but stealing techniques is not part of being a team. Kakashi sighed and replied, I would agree. Sasuke, you are not to use your Sharingan on allies, is that understood? Sasuke grunted and replied, as if they would have anything I would want, but I understand. Kakashi appeared very happy and said, good, now that is settled. We need to work on you becoming Chunin. The rest of the day was put into team drills, but Naruto only seemed to be present and do what was asked of him. Haku had to go off to work at the hospital. After a little while, Kakashi handed the members of his team a Chunin entrance form and told them to meet the academy in 3 days in room 303. Chapter 5. The Chunin exams begin. 3 days and a couple practices later, Naruto was dressing in his new outfit. He had begun to like the tiger camo look. Haku had dressed in a similar outfit, but was blue camouflage, reminiscent of Zabuza's outfit. Haku had placed the equipment on the dresser for both of them the night before. She had also given Hinata pep speech about today. Haku had also met a couple of genin and been placed on their team 2 days ago to be entered into the exams. This surprised all 3 genin, but it also meant that they had an extra ally in the exams. They had met her new team, and they seemed amicable. Their names were Junai and Inaho, since Kamugi was injured a couple days ago and they needed a ready, but effective genin to fit into their team. They seemed to work well as a team with Haku in the 2 days they had worked together, but also Naruto had told them to support Haku however they could. Naruto and Haku left the Hyuga compound ready for a mission. Hinata met up with them just as they left the compound, but also Niji was right behind them. This didn't sit well with Naruto since he and Niji still had problems. Flashback. Niji looked around, see a lot of the villagers scowling at the group, mainly at Naruto. He felt that the boy was bringing shame onto his clan and Hinata was helping by leading the way. While had to admit she had gained confidence in the last couple months, she was still a weak leader and would never amount to anything. He was brought out his musings when Naruto asked, burn a hole in anyone with your eyes lately? Niji looked over at the younger boy and replied, I do not approve of this, but the head of my clan is offering you and your clan residence in our compound, so do not bring disgrace upon my clan. Naruto scowled at the boy and replied, I'm sorry I don't have a stick up my ass, but hey, each to their own. Niji clenched his fists and said, I do not, as you say, have a stick up my ass. I am showing myself as a dignified example of the Hyuga clan, by looking down upon everyone? Man, you must be fun all the time, Naruto replied and put his hands behind his head, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. Niji gritted his teeth at the laid-back attitude of this genin. You should present yourself better, since you're now a clan head. Naruto closed an eye and looked at Niji with the open one. He then said, I will not act like someone I'm not, so drop it. Please Niji-san, don't aggravate my husband, Haku asked in a pleading tone. He then glared at the older girl and said, and you should act more like the wife of a clan head. Niji then found himself having to catch a fist from an angry Naruto. He smirked and said, "You will have to better than that to defeat me, Uzumaki." Naruto pulled his fist back and there was steam rising from both Naruto's fist and Niji's open palm. "You shouldn't tell others how to act. I might not be refined, but at least I'm not an asshole." Hinata moved to his side and said, "Please Naruto-kun, he was requested to do this by my father, so be nice." Naruto glared at Niji for a moment and then sighed. He then said, "If he agrees to not say anything until we get to your house, I agree to be nice to him. I will also keep my mouth shut as a way of keeping it equal." Niji turned his head and looked up. "As if we were equals," he said quietly. Naruto rolled his eyes, but said nothing. The rest of the trip was quiet, but everyone could feel the tension in the group. Naruto even stayed quiet until Haku had shut the door. Niji fumed for the next couple days, but his duties kept the two apart from each other, thankfully for the Hyuga household. End flashback. Naruto had agreed to keep the peace between the two clans while he could. The four went their separate ways to meet with their team before the exams began. Naruto met up with Sakura and Sasuke, who thankfully had mellowed out over the last few days. Naruto walked up to the pair, and they nodded to him. The trio headed to the academy where the exams were to be held. There was a commotion near a door, but Naruto shook his head and motioned for them to watch. In the middle of the commotion was a boy clad in green spandex, who wore several bruises and scrapes. "Ha! You plan to take the Chunin exam with that? You should quit now," a boy with long spiky hair and a pair of swords on his back exclaimed. "Please let us through," a girl with a pair of hair buns asked pleadingly. She was smacked across the face and to the ground by the same boy. This brought several comments from the gathered crowd. Sakura and Sasuke looked at Naruto, who just sighed, but didn't do anything. "What did you say? Listen, this is our kindness. The Chunin exam isn't easy and even we failed it 3 straight times. Those that take this exam and end up quitting as shinobi, those that die during the exam, we've seen it all." The boy then smiled and then said, "And Chunin often become captains of military teams. The failure of a mission, the death of a comrade, that is all the captain's responsibility. Yet kids like you think that you can pass? We are just thinning out those that will fail anyway. What's wrong with that?" Sasuke began to step forward, but Naruto grabbed his arm and shook his head. He then pointed to the room number, and then out the window. He then motioned for his team to follow. Sasuke glared at Naruto, but followed. They moved to the stairs and then went up them. They found Haku and her team waiting for them. "So you noticed the genjutsu? Glad you didn't try to break it, since it will thin out the crowd," Haku stated. Sasuke looked at Naruto in confusion and then asked, "How did he notice it?" "He's an idiot." Naruto sighed and replied, "Who is Hinata-chan sensei?" Sakura smiled and replied, "Yuhi Kurenai, and she specializes in genjutsu." Naruto smirked and said, "Yep, got it in one, Sakura. Now let's go and get this over with." Sasuke grabbed Naruto's arm and said, "You know that you're not the leader. We also have some unfinished business." Naruto sighed and replied, "According to what I've learned, there is a written test, a survival test, and then a general tournament where if you get to that point you can possibly fight Haku-chan or me if you like. But until then we are teammates and fellow genin of the Leaf." Sasuke and Sakura's eyes went wide at his explanation. Naruto and Haku's team moved up the stairs, with Sasuke and Sakura right behind. They made it up to the door only to find Kakashi and Haku's temporary sensei. "Glad you all could make it or I would have had to turn you back," Kakashi said happily. Sakura looked confused, but shrugged it off when Sasuke grabbed her arm and pulled her into the room. Naruto looked around the room and saw lots of angry faces. He also felt some familiar chakra signatures. He turned and smiled at Hinata, who smiled back. Naruto then noticed Haku and her team move to the side wall. Naruto smirked when Ino jumped onto Sasuke's back. This started an argument between Ino and Sakura. Naruto would have proclaimed his belief in himself out loud, but Haku had told him to try to keep himself secretive as possible. Thanks to some work with Kikiyo, he had started to learn about sensing chakra. He closed his eyes and felt the room. Most of the people in the room had about the same, or a little more chakra than Sasuke, a few less and a few more. There were several interesting chakras in the room. He felt 2 overpowered chakras and he quickly zeroed in on those. First was the boy from Suna, Gaara. His chakra was tainted, that was the only way he could describe it. Then there was a girl from Taki with mint green hair. While her chakra was tainted, it was mellower than Naruto's, which he could tell was also tainted. It then dawned on him that there were 3 Jinchuriki in these exams. He felt one other chakra that seemed out of place, but it was a Konoha shinobi. The gray-haired, glasses-wearing boy had similar chakra levels of most jounin. This was an annoyance, but Naruto just thought the boy might be a plant to throw others off. He then felt a strong chakra, but it was different and he couldn't quite figure out what was different about it. He intentionally looked at the red-haired girl from Kusa with glasses. This earned her attention and also caused her to blush at the attention. He listened to the conversation between Sasuke and the gray-haired boy, Kabuto. The interesting thing was the things that were on the boy's cards. Missions and ranks of missions weren't what caught his attention, no. It was the information about the personal strengths of the people on the cards. Naruto immediately threw a kunai through the card with his name on it when Kabuto mentioned his bloodline expansion. He also noticed the girl from Kusa look at him in surprise when his name was mentioned. Naruto glared at Kabuto when he asked, "Why did you do that?" Naruto just replied, "That is privileged information and you shouldn't have it." Kabuto shrugged and tried to avoid an attack from a trio of Oto shinobi and was apparently injured by an unseen force. Naruto looked over at Hinata who had just deactivated her Byakugan, nodded that she understood the attack. Next the proctor and his assistants appeared. Naruto followed direction and waited for the proctor to give them directions on the test. Naruto ended up between Haku and Hinata during the written test. The rules were somewhat simple. They could not get caught cheating and Naruto was easily given a way out of this, by Haku writing on his paper in ice and him just putting it down on the paper. At the end most of the genin were worried as time ran out. Time for the last question, but first I must ask if you want to stay and answer the question or leave. The reason I ask is because if you fail this question you will not be allowed advance beyond genin, Ibiki explained. You can't do that, Kiba exclaimed in protest. Naruto chuckled and whispered, just ignore him. Hinata's father is more imposing. This earned him giggles from Haku and Hinata, but also a glare from Ibiki. You think that if you fail you will advance? You guys just got lucky to get me, since I will make sure if you fail this question you will never make it past genin ever. I got authorization from the leaders and the Hokage to do this, so who is going to quit? He asked with a sinister smile. He then turned to Naruto and asked, so you think that Hayashi-sama is more imposing than I am? Naruto put his hands behind his head and began to relax. He then replied, yeah, ever piss off a Hyuga? Ibiki chuckled and replied, I've pissed a few in my time and some others that would make your skin crawl. Naruto sat forward and stared the man in the eye. He then said quietly, I think I might have a trump card for you, but can't mention it, village secrets you know. Ibiki kept his composure, but smirked at the boy. He then scowled and looked around the room to find a dozen hands in the air. All of you with your hands in the air will take your teammates and leave the room, he said authoritatively. He then waited another 5 minutes. He then said, for all of you that remain. He paused to watch their reactions and then said, you pass. The collective reaction was, what? Ibiki chuckled and began to remove his bandana. The scars on his face were just the beginning. He revealed a bald head with scars from cuts and burns adorning his skull. A Chunin or any shinobi in responsibility has to have the courage to accept that his mission might fail, but continue anyways. This is a lesson in what might happen if you continue with a mission. Those arrayed against you might do anything to make sure that your mission fails. Torture and killing is part of being a shinobi, so understand that if you continue with a mission that you as a Chunin are responsible for a mission success and having the guts to complete it might just be enough for the mission to succeed. The next few minutes flashed by Naruto and his companions. A special jounin entered through the window and displayed a banner signifying her as the next proctor. The remaining teams headed to the training area 44, also known as the Forest of Death. Naruto arrived just after Anko and smiled at the woman. Anko looked around and saw the early arrivals. Naruto nodded to Shino, but raised an eyebrow to see the mint-haired girl from Taki. He walked over and she looked at him with orange eyes. He blushed and smiled. I like the color of your eyes, he said. The look of shock, then anger, and finally a smile crossed her face. I can see that by your choice of clothing. I would advise that you stay away from me. I'm dangerous, she explained cryptically. Naruto looked down and said, the loneliness is stifling, isn't it? She turned to him, surprise plastered across her face. What did you say? She asked in confusion. They hate you, but you really don't know why until later, and they shun or even hurt you for nothing you have control over, Naruto replied. She furrowed her eyebrows and asked angrily, what do you know about the boy from Suna? You and I have a secret each and are hated for it. I show a happy idiot mask to hide my loneliness. The boy from Suna emits a menacing aura to scare others away. You look like you've learned to hate everyone around you. I almost did that, but it didn't do me any good, so I just became a prankster, he explained. You still haven't told me what you know about it, she said, more asking than anything. You, Sandboy, and I are all Jinchuriki, he replied, but then laughed. It was a dry laugh and continued, the power of human sacrifice. Ha! We sacrifice and they use us as tools. I have decided to make my own path. He then looked into her eyes and saw tears welling up in the sides of her eyes. Be strong for now and we can talk after this portion of the test is over. How can you be so strong? She asked. I found someone and something to anchor me. I can be your friend and will ask for nothing in return. I think that you need one, he said. You know nothing, she exclaimed. Ridicule, beatings, assassinations, destruction of your stuff for no other reason than you contain a demon. You didn't ask for it, but it was thrust upon you. We have to live with it, but we can rise above it and learn to help each other. I know that there are 9 Bijou and that means that there are 9 of us. I offer you the hand of friendship as the container of the Kyuubi and as a fellow Jinchuriki, he said as he offered his hand to the girl. She scowled, but said quietly, if you are sincere I will accept your offer. I must push you away to show my teammates that I'm not sucking up to you. She then slapped Naruto's hand away and exclaimed, get away from me. She then winked at him, but he still saw sadness and trepidation in her eyes. The 20 teams all listened intently to the instructions given by Anko and filled out their forms and headed to their designated gates for the exam. 30 minutes later a bell was sounded and then the gates were opened, letting the genin in. Naruto scowled as he sensed several teams approach from both directions. He perked up and said, "We've got company?" Sakura asked. "Which direction?" Naruto replied with a smile, "Yes." Sakura scowled and said, "Not funny, Naruto." Sasuke then said, "We can handle them." Little did he know who they would face. Chapter 6. The exam continues. Naruto crossed his fingers and thought, shadow clone. 10 new Narutos appeared in the clearing. He pulled out a kunai, and his copies did the same. Sakura began to tremble at how serious Naruto was being. All the clones suddenly disappeared in clouds of smoke, while Naruto cried out in pain. He scowled and was surrounded by at least a dozen Saban. He also had at least 4 stuck in him at various locations. He then began to run through hand seals only to be struck by a gust of wind, throwing him clear of the clearing. A sinister voice that ran chills down Sakura's spine began to speak. "Now that the annoying brat is taken care of, hand over you scroll," a defiantly feminine voice ordered. Sasuke grabbed Sakura and pulled her towards where Naruto flew off towards. A chuckle was heard. My, they run like little rats," a female with a grass headband said to her 2 companions. Naruto was finally able to right himself before he slammed into a tree. He sighed and then said, "Great, I still need to get the hand seals down quicker." He jumped down the ground and then closed his eyes. He suddenly brought his kunai up and blocked 2 swords. Lucky we have you all alone," a voice said. Naruto opened his eyes to see that he had blocked 2 swords. He turned his kunai, and then spun around to his right. He was able to embed one of his kunai in the ranged shinobi closest to himself. The man screamed and jumped off. Naruto smiled and pulled out new kunai to replace the lost one. The man's eyes appeared to be quite angry. "You should just resolve yourself to dying at our hands, Konoha scum," he exclaimed. Naruto pouted and replied, "But I was having so much fun, maybe Zabuza-sensei will reward me if I get my 10th, 11th and 12th kills," knowing full well that Zabuza's body had been burned and then buried out at sea and only his sword was left as a memorial. The guy's eyes widened at the mention of the demon of the mist. This was enough for Naruto to push past the man's defense, and push the kunai into the man's left lung and graze the heart. Naruto watched as the man collapsed, and dropped his sword. Naruto turned to a specific tree and said, "If you don't want him to die, I would surrender now, because I know where you are and will spare your lives on the condition that you give me all scrolls that you obtained so far. I might even help heal him a little bit so you can continue and pester other teams." "How do we know we can trust you?" a voice asked from the tree he was looking at. "If you want your friend to live, you don't have a choice," Naruto replied. "Are you a censor type?" the voice asked. "No, I'm the Easter Bunny here to give you colored eggs." "What do you think, idiot?" he replied angrily. He then looked down at the man on the ground and said, "I would guess that you have about 20 minutes until the slice I gave to his heart will finally give way and he will die from hypertension and blood lose." He then turned and saw a scroll coming towards him. He raised his hand and caught the scroll. He then sighed and grabbed the seal and crushed it, causing the bomb tag to fizzle. He then whispered, "Idiot. You just killed yourself and your team." The injured and another man jumped at Naruto. Naruto sighed and ran through several hand seals. He then grabbed a couple kunai from his pouch as he whispered, "Wind style, great breakthrough." He tossed the kunai in front of his jutsu, and it took the kunai straight into the 2 charging ranged shinobi. The men were blown back into the tree, but were both about 3 feet above the ground. They then looked down at their chest and found a hole there, and felt themselves being held up on the tree in their backs. One of them managed to whisper out, "How? Know thy enemy, know thyself and victory is assured, but if you don't know, go with overkill," Naruto replied and tilted his head with a smile. He then said, "I would have let you go, but you pushed the issue, but thanks for the scroll and the supplies." Naruto sadly watched as the 2 on the tree expired. He then rummaged through their stuff and took what he deemed as valuable and left the bodies after a small prayer. He then jumped off where he felt a larger chakra signature along with those of his teammates. Sasuke was sweating and Sakura was barely holding on to consciousness at the killing intent that was coming off the grass genin. "This can't be a genin," Sasuke thought to himself. He grabbed several shuriken and threw them at their assailant. The woman smiled and said, "So the boy has some teeth after all." The woman suddenly disappeared as the shuriken reached her. She reappeared in front of Sasuke and kicked him and Sakura to the side with a fiendish laugh. She then said, "Let's have some fun, why don't we?" The next several minutes were filled with the grass genin kicking the pair around the clearing. She finally stopped when a chill ran down her spine and her compatriots fell out of the canopy with their faces blued with death, but their lips were a dark bluish purple, as if they had been frozen to death. She then jumped back as a kunai with 3 explosive notes tied it landed in front of her. The notes went off and then the woman standing a distance away began to laugh. "This little game is getting interesting," she said to no one in particular. Naruto and his clones lay his teammates out and began to check them for injuries. Sakura glared at Naruto as his hands moved over her chest, but she then winced when he touched her rib. She knew better than to complain, since he was basically the medic for the team right now. She knew that he wasn't groping her because of the way he didn't seem to enjoy touching her breast through the fabric. He sighed and then said, "Well, Sakura, you basically have a cracked rib and a sprained wrist." She glared at him and asked angrily, "So how are my breasts?" Naruto replied while checking out Sasuke, "You pulled your left pectoral muscle. Otherwise I wouldn't worry." She was shocked and asked, "But you were groping me." Wish I knew diagnostic jutsu so I could give a better conclusion of what I find. Otherwise, I would say you are a girl and I have no interest in feeling you up, sorry. You can have Sasuke do that now if you like, since he is just bruised. We need to avoid that lady if at all possible. Sakura blushed at his statement, but then asked, how did you find us, since we were so far from our original position? Naruto sighed and replied, I'm a sensor type, and the funny thing is that until Haku-chan, I never sat down and really learned to feel what was around me. I can tell where people are right now. We're about 100 yards from another team, but they are hurt, and one of them is about to either die or pass out from chakra exhaustion. What about that woman? Sakura asked worriedly. She is quite a ways away. I'm also taking both of the scrolls, Naruto said as he pulled their scroll formed the unconscious Uchiha. Both? Sakura asked. Yeah, ran into a team of ranged shinobi when that lady blew me away from you guys, Naruto explained, while he poured some water down Sasuke's throat. She looked worriedly at Naruto and asked, why you didn't kill them, did you? Naruto sighed and replied, I tried not to, but they gave me no choice, since it was 3-1 odds and I gave them a chance to withdraw. Sakura shuddered and looked worriedly at Naruto. He doesn't seem to be disturbed by killing, she thought. She then looked at Sasuke and asked, is he going to be okay? Naruto nodded and replied, yeah, he is just exhausted. We need to toughen you both up. His joke wasn't well received. He then lay against the tree and closed his eyes. Sakura looked at her teammate in awe. Haku sighed as she set the last of the third team that had attacked T-team in the bushes. Her teammates had already given her accolades for her keeping them 1 alive and 2 getting them more scrolls. She then sighed at the third marriage proposal from her teammates. She couldn't tell the boy that she was already married at the moment, but just pushed their enthusiasm aside and tried to figure out where her husband was. She could feel his chakra beacon, since they had worked on his sensing ability. The big problem was that they were quite a ways apart, and she was exhausted. The team set up camp and readied themselves for the night. Naruto suddenly sprung up and exclaimed, shit! She's back! This put both of his teammates on alert. They then heard laughter coming from all around them, but Naruto kept his eyes fixed on a certain direction. Ho ho! You are a censor. I think I will enjoy this, Naruto-kun, the voice said. Naruto quickly pulled out his kunai and turned to block an attack. Sasuke and Sakura were in awe of the speed at which Naruto had blocked the grass shinobi. She then said, you have progressed some, Naruto-kun. Now feel the full weight of my power. Naruto turned to accept the attack, but Sasuke and Sakura both fell to the ground under the pressure of the killing intent let loose by this genin. Naruto's eyes flashed purple, but it wasn't noticed in the low light levels. Naruto threw caution to the wind and extended a palm forward. A gust of wind impacted the grass shinobi, throwing her back. Naruto was breathing hard from this exertion. The enemy got up and brushed off her outfit and said, seal less jutsu. I'm impressed, but you're still not on my level. Naruto dropped one of his kunai and began to do one-handed seals. He then opened his mouth and shot out several water bullets at the attacking shinobi, to no avail. Naruto was sent into the trees courtesy of a kick from the grass shinobi. She then said, bye-bye, troublemaker. She then clapped her hands and said, now to have some fun with you, Sasuke-kun. Sakura watched in awe as Sasuke was able to keep up with this genin, and eventually burn the woman. That was when she noticed something wrong. The face of the woman was burned off and she saw a man's face that ghostly white. The man broke the wires that Sasuke had wrapped him in and sent the fire that had burned off the face, like they were string. The man seemed happy that Sasuke was able to fight him at a sufficient level. Sasuke had reached his limit when Sakura had finally decided to try to help. She began to throw shuriken and kunai with abandon. The man watched in fascination as the girl was doing something that was basically impossible for her abilities. She missed, but she tried. She asked, who are you? Why, little bird, I'm Orochimaru, the snake that will swallow Konoha whole. But time for me to leave. But not before I leave a parting gift, he explained, while standing above an unconscious Sasuke Uchiha. He bent over and bit him on the neck. He then jumped back when a huge eye slammed into where Orochimaru had been. The eye broke into pieces and fell towards the ground below. He chuckled and said, you're too late and now he will seek me out, but first to deal with you pest. He jumped up from the branch he was on and hit Naruto in the stomach. Sakura watched as Naruto's face contorted in pain and lack of breath. He then threw Naruto towards the ground, which was another 50 feet below her. A figure suddenly appeared and caught Naruto, arresting his plummet to a certain doom. Sakura looked relieved when she saw Haku and her team looking up at Orochimaru. The man laughed, and then jumped away. The two teams had set up camp inside of a large root system below one of the huge trees. Haku lay against the side of the cave with Naruto held close to her. She had examined both Naruto and Sasuke, finding that both were exhausted. Sakura watched Haku and at the look of worry written all over her face. Janai entered the cave and said, traps are set, and we should know if anyone comes close. A string pulled a stick and Janai smiled, we have guests, but we can wait for them to come to us, since this place is defensible. Haku-san, we are at your disposal. Haku nodded and smiled warmly at her teammates. She then looked back down at the boy in her arms. She wasn't quite sure what Orochimaru had done to him, but it had thrown his system out of balance, and that is saying a lot for him. She then looked over at the Uchiha boy only to hear Sakura huff at the glance. Chapter 7. Haku sighed and said, I have no interest in the Uchiha boy, other than in medical terms. He is suffering from some sort of chakra poisoning as best as I can determine. Sakura looked at Haku and asked frantically, can't you do anything about that? Haku sighed and replied, regrettably not. I lack the amount of chakra and the skill to help expunge the foreign chakra from his system. We will just have to wait him out, and hope that he makes it through it. Sakura's face began to run with tears and she said frantically, you've got to save him. Haku replied, while I'm flattered with your belief that I have such skill, I don't. Now we need to prepare for our guests. Sakura scowled at Naruto and said, what about the baka? Haku's demeanor became dark and said, you will treat him kindly or face my wrath. He like the Uchiha is suffering from a chakra malady that Orochimaru inflicted upon him. Naruto grimaced and said quietly while his eyes are still closed, they are coming. Kunai looked at the boy in surprise, but then nodded and said, our guests are advancing. From outside of the cave a voice said, bring the Uchiha out, and we will leave you in peace. Sakura looked worriedly at Sasuke and then at Haku and asked, you're not going to give him up, are you? Haku shook her head and replied, no, it would destroy Naruto-kun's chances of becoming a Chunin. Janai-san, Inoho-san. We need to protect our fellow genin. Inoho nodded as did Janai. Sakura sighed heavily and said, thank you. Haku gently set Naruto down and then stood. She exited the cave and confronted the three. She scowled and asked, what do you want? A man wearing bandages around his head only showing his right eye replied, we want the Uchiha. Senbon appeared in her hands and she asked, and if we don't? The man shrugged and replied, we kill you. I would like to see that, since we have already dispatched 3 teams to find the proper scroll. We can just add yours to our collection, Haku said in a nonchalant tone. The joy was just exuding from the mummified man. He then looked around and said, your traps are simplistic and easy to avoid. The disturbed earth he then jumped up only for a log to swing at him, and he pulled his sleeve back to reveal a metal encasement of his arm with holes in it. The log appeared to hit the man, but then shattered. He then landed in front of Haku and said somewhat impressive, but not effective enough. He then swung at Haku who didn't move. He was stunned for a moment until Haku shattered and then fell apart into blocks of ice. His arm suddenly went numb and fell to his side. Haku then whispered into his ear, you are still not at my level, but using sound is a nice touch. His eyes went wide and he turned to find nothing there. Fight me, bitch! He exclaimed. From around the forest Haku replied, you call me a female dog in heat? He turned to a tree and threw a kunai at the area by the tree. I'm impressed that you could figure out where I was, but still not fast enough. Leave now or your team will not finish this event. The temperature began to fall and the breath of the 3 sound shinobi could be seen. The girl then said, how is it getting so cold? Suddenly a dark chakra began to explode from the cave. The third turned to Cave and said, what the hell, might as well just eliminate him quickly. He raised his hands just as Sakura began to exit the cave. He smiled evilly and exclaimed, decapitating shock wave. A gust of wind caught Sakura and sent her flying into the cave. Suddenly Sasuke appeared with Sakura in his arms. He looked down at her and asked, did they do this to you? The third sound shinobi smirked as Sasuke handed Sakura to Inoho and replied, yeah, what about it? He lifted his arms and fired a second wind attack at the face of the cave. He began to laugh as the dust cleared and Sasuke wasn't there. Look, I killed him, he exclaimed happily. Suddenly his arms were pulled behind him and he felt a foot in his back. Sasuke was there holding the man's arms and sporting black fire-like marks on the right side of his body. He smiled eerily and asked, you seem to like these arms of yours. He twisted and pulled on the arms causing the sound shinobi to scream in pain. He then pulled out a kunai and walked behind the man. He lowered the kunai to the man's throat, only for Sakura to wrap him in an embrace. Please stop, Sasuke-kun, Sakura pleaded with him. Sasuke dropped his kunai and slumped into Sakura's arms. The man slowly rose only for a saban to land in front of him. Haku looked down with eyes that bore through the man and said, you will take your teammates, and leave before you anger me and I destroy you utterly. He looked at both his teammates. The female was sporting a dead arm on the other side than the mummy, and his arms were now useless. He nodded and replied, this isn't over, but we will leave for now. He and his teammates jumped out of the area. Suddenly Lee jumped down and looked at both Haku and Sakura with hearts in his eyes. Both of you are beauties without compare, he exclaimed. Haku giggled and said, while I can only speak for myself, I'm not on the market. I'm sorry, Lee-san. He then looked longingly at Sakura who shook her head as she put Sasuke gently down and laid his head on her lap. I'm sorry, Lee-san, I'm waiting for someone, she said apologetically. Lee nodded and said, if you can no longer wait for them then I will be there for you. He then jumped up into the trees. Ino suddenly jumped out of the bushes and yelled, get your hands off Sasuke and hand over your extra scrolls. We know that your team is the weakest, Sakura. Haku jumped down and said, but Yamanaka-san, they are not alone and your team is not up to the task of even taking on Naruto-kun if he were awake. Ino began to laugh and replied, Naruto? That baka, I could beat him. A sudden chill ran down her spine. Really, Ino? I would like to see that, Naruto said from the entrance of the cave. He then did several hand seals and roots came up from beneath Ino and wrapped around her ankles. Try and fight when you can't move, Naruto said jokingly. He turned to Sakura and pulled Sasuke over his shoulder. We need to get out of here. Haku nodded and helped Sakura to her feet. Ino growled and said, Naruto. You get back here and fight me. Naruto turned and replied, I'm a lot stronger than you think and I let Haku-chan do the fighting of girls for me if I can. You sexist pig! Ino exclaimed. No, he just knows that I will show less mercy to a woman. It isn't sexist to choose not to fight. Also he could lose his temper and show you just how dangerous he could be, Haku said as the group of 6 jumped into the trees and headed to the central tower. Ino cut the plants from her ankles not thinking of it, but both Choji and Shikamaru were looking at the plants in awe. Orochimaru handed a note to Kabuto and then jumped off. Kabuto opened the note and his eyes went wide. He then signaled for his teammates to follow him quickly. Naruto looked around at the assembled genin and only saw 7 other teams, 1 from Suna, Taki and Oto respectively and 5 including his own team from Konoha. Naruto tuned out everything other than any rules that might apply to them. He did take note that they would have to trim down the number of possible contestants for the 3rd and final round of the Chunin exam. Haku noted that Shino and the loudmouth from Oto were first on the list for mini-tournament. Haku watched as Shino would bait the man into showing his wind tubes and how they worked, along with how his arms weren't as injured as they first appeared. Shino showed that he was a good shinobi, in that he snuck his insects into Zaka's tubes and blocked them while he forced the man to reveal that both his arms were functional. This caused Zaka to actually use his decapitating wave jutsu, but with Shino's insects blocking the tubes the attack nearly blew the man's arms off. Shino was declared the winner and Zaka was taken to the infirmary. Next was Sasuke and Manji from Taki. Sasuke glared at Manji while the boy exclaimed, So you're the one who's on the team with the demon lover. Shut up, Sasuke said in a bored tone. Begin, Hate said as he jumped away. Sasuke, having had a couple days of rest, now felt better, but Kakashi had warned him not to use the curse mark. He watched the Taki shinobi and then smirked. He had dealt with them before. He just hoped that this one didn't have a reserve of water. His hopes were dashed when Manji opened a water skin and did several hand seals. Water poured out of the water skin and formed a sword in the boy's right hand. Sasuke prepared by pulling out a kunai. He then dashed forward. Manji blocked the swipe with the kunai with his water sword. You'll have to better than that, weakling. We knew that Naruto-sama was strong and that he supported your team, Manji explained. Sasuke gritted his teeth, and the two battled for supremacy with the weapons in their hands. Sasuke then asked, You insult Naruto 1 minute then praise him the next. What is with that? The pair jumped away from each other, and then Manji answered, He is the savior of Taki and also loves our resident demon. That is all I can say without divulging village secrets. Now come at me and show me what being an Uchiha means. Sasuke screamed in anger and charged at Manji. Naruto looked down and said, He's losing control and might just lose, since Manji is controlling the match. Very observant Naruto-kun, Kakashi stated happily. He then continued, Working with Haku-chan has been helpful in more ways than I had thought. Naruto glared at his sensei and said, Like you've been doing much to help us with our abilities. Kakashi put a hand to his chest and exclaimed sarcastically, You wound me, Naruto-kun. Naruto grumbled under his breath and said, As if I could. Kakashi laughed and turned back to the match. He sighed as he watched and saw Sasuke losing control of his emotions and forgetting that water beats fire in most cases. Sasuke was breathing hard, as was Manji, but Manji wore the smirk and said, I'll give you this, you're good at least, but not as good as Naruto-sama. Sasuke growled and charged at Manji only to have his kunai pushed aside and his arm cut, thus losing the grasp he had on his kunai. Sasuke grabbed his right arm to stem the blood flow and then jumped back. He then took a deep breath and pulled out a dozen shuriken and threw them. Manji laughed as half passed by him, not even coming near him, while he blocked those that did with his water sword. He didn't notice the shuriken that passed him began to turn and arc around him. He realized too late that the shuriken were being manipulated by wires and most of the wires wrapped around him. He was able to cut a couple, but soon found himself tied up and unable to move. Sasuke smirked. He pulled out a new kunai and walked over to Manji and asked, Do you give up or do I end you? Manji sighed and replied, I give up. Hate then said, Winner Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke moved away with the medics to get his arm looked at. Fu began to prepare for her match against Kabuto. Chapter 8, Matches continue. Kabuto took up a ready stance while Fu glared at the white-haired boy. Hate brought his hand down and said, Begin. He jumped back as to not be caught in any quickly used jutsu. Fu did several hand seals and slammed her hand down on the ground. She didn't say anything and Kabuto looked at the girl only for his senses to start to blare a warning. He jumped just as a spike of stone came up and hit his leg. He landed hard, but still stood. He looked down at the wound and saw a bleeding hole in his lower calf. He cursed himself for his inattentiveness. He then looked up and the girl had her mouth open. He was blinded by a sudden flash, and then felt a kunai at his throat and another at his kidneys. I give up, Proctor, he exclaimed. Winner Fu from Taki, Hade exclaimed. It took several minutes for everyone's eyes to readjust to normal lighting after the flash. Rather anticlimactic, Kabuto-kun, the sound jounin said, who bore a striking resemblance to Orochimaru. She caught me by surprise, Kabuto said in an embarrassed tone. Kabuto and the jounin both shared an evil smirk and both faded into the background. Ino smirked at the listed names on the board and said, Looks like I get to prove who's better, Naruto Baka. Naruto sighed and jumped down to the arena floor. He looked bored and turned his head to the side. Ino, do you really want me to go all out? Or you can just give up now, he said, then smiled widely. Ino looked offended and said, bring all you got. Naruto looked the Hokage and the man looked at his wooden pipe and shook his head. Naruto understood the silent meaning. He then turned back to Ino and said, it's time for you chill out with the baka comments. Why should I? You were the dead last in class, after all, Ino commented. Not everyone does well scholastically, Naruto said with a smirk. Ino growled and replied, I bet you don't even know what that word means. Naruto chuckled and replied, it means with schoolwork. Haku-chan has been a great help in learning, so you attribute your success to a woman. Glad you know your place, Ino said snobbishly. Naruto sighed and said, your husband, if you ever get one, will be whipped. Hate sighed and said, begin. Ino said, you have no clue. She then gasped when Naruto lifted his head and his bangs no longer hid his eyes. They were ice blue and she saw nothing in them. She then noticed the temperature dropping. Her breath began to form clouds of steam in front of her. You have no idea what it is to be a partner. You insult my other half and now you will pay, Naruto said angrily. Ino began to shiver and asked, what happened to the temperature? I told you to chill out, Naruto replied angrily. He took up a defensive stance. You think you can intimidate me? Ino asked angrily. Naruto shook his head and replied, no, I'm in for a little retribution on what you fangirls visited upon me for no other reason than challenging team for some attention. Bring it dead last, she exclaimed. Haku sighed and said she has no clue how much he is holding back. Sakura looked at her in confusion. What do you mean? He has been abused by you and the other girls for years and there is a pent-up anger, and I'm afraid he might let it loose on Ino down there. I was hoping that he would have taken some of it out on you, Haku explained. Naruto smirked and drew a kunai. He slowly walked around the ring, circling Ino. Ino pulled out some shuriken and threw them at Naruto only for him to block all of them. He continued to circle and their breath became more visible as the temperature continued to drop. The breaths of everyone began to create a light fog in the arena. Ino lost sight of Naruto in a thicker area of fog. Her shivering continued to increase as she wasn't used to the cold. She began to cycle her chakra to try to keep warm. She then heard Naruto call out from the mist, using your chakra to keep warm is a good tactic, but lights you up like a beacon. So does your voice, Ino replied and threw a couple shuriken, only to hear them impact on the wall. You know the loneliness is unbearable. I didn't have parents like you did, Ino. Mine were taken from me on the day of my birth. I just wanted friends and you girls berated and degrade me for nothing more than being an orphan and your parents' misguided belief that they were right. His voice lingered in the mist. You are more of a loser now than you were in the academy, Ino exclaimed. She then had to jump to the side only for the shoulder area of her outfit to be cut. While it revealed the mesh shirt underneath, it only left her shoulders showing and nothing more. You missed, she said happily. She then felt a cut on her leg near her crotch and looked down to see a red line on her inner thigh. She then noticed her wrappings begin to fall away. Was that a hit, Ino? Naruto asked from behind her. You still can't win, Ino exclaimed through chattering teeth. You sound cold. You know hypothermia happens as a slow process, Naruto said in an annoyed tone. Didn't know you knew such a big word, Ino taunted. As you turn, your leg wrappings are coming undone. I'm guessing you at least wear panties under. But do you want to show them off to everyone? Naruto asked. Pervert. Ino exclaimed. Everyone is a pervert to some level after puberty. It is in our nature to procreate. We desire the experience of being close to someone. You desire to be close to team, but he has other desires and right now it doesn't include girls or women. Also he is looking for powerful women, but I think that he is misguided, since if he found a powerful woman and she beat him he would trail her to the ends of the earth and never accomplish his goals. Now we can have a real fight if you like, Ino-chan, Naruto said in a voice that sent a shiver down her spine. She blocked high and to her left intercepting a kunai held by Naruto. He looked down at her midsection, but Ino misinterpreted it as him looking at her chest. She looked down to see his other hand with a kunai, and it was right at the level of her chest. She wore a confused look, but then Naruto jumped back. Ino saw her outfit flutter open revealing her black panties and her bra for a second. She crossed her arms and yelled, pervert. She then felt a blade up against her neck. Rise slowly and I won't embarrass you too much, Naruto said authoritatively. Ino nodded and stood. He then made a simple order, surrender or lose all dignity. Ino felt herself become cold, but only where her clothes were. And if I don't? She asked. He whispered into her ear, I know you feel your clothes are cold, but what you don't realize is that they are frozen and I will destroy them with just a hit, leaving you naked. Unless you're a true kunoichi and fight against a male, while use your feminine wiles to distract me with your state of new undress. Ino's eyes went wide and thought for a minute. She then became angry and said, you wouldn't dare, Naruto. She then felt his hand hit her ass, but what surprised her was that something solid broke and hit her ass. It then broke as it hit the ground. He then said, I could have killed you several times over by now, just surrender, Ino. Ino reached around and only felt her panties, instead of wrapping in the back of her skirt. She grumbled and then said, fine Naruto, you win, I surrender. Naruto backed off and pulled off his jacket. He then handed it to Ino. The fog suddenly hit the ground and the air began to warm. Ino sighed as she continued to shiver. Hate then said, Winner Uzumaki Naruto? Kiba was cold, but looked down and asked, what just happened and why does she have Naruto's coat wrapped around her body? Kurenai smiled warmly at the graciousness of Naruto for both preserving her dignity and offering his coat. She looked down at Hinata and saw her smile. Ino scowled and said, You're going to replace this outfit. You're not my wife and it was damaged during the exams, so you pay for a replacement, Naruto replied in an annoyed tone. She lifted her hand to smack him, but retracted it when he asked, Do you want me to take my coat back? Ino sighed and shook her head. Naruto walked up to Hinata and nodded to her while she nodded back. He moved beside Haku and sat down. You know that was a lot harder in here where there is so little water. Haku smirked and replied, Yes, but you did just fine. You could have created it if you wanted to. Naruto closed his eyes and sighed. You could have just destroyed her outfit, Naruto, Kakashi said in a playful tone. Pervert and pedophile. Next you'll ask Sakura to do a striptease, Naruto said angrily. Kakashi chuckled and replied to an angry Sakura, That would be interesting, but not my thing. She's a little young for me. A little young? That is like saying that you're only a little late. You're like her grandpa, Naruto countered emphatically. This comment brought a few giggles and a couple chuckles, but didn't placate Sakura, as she exclaimed, Naruto. Naruto then pointed off in the distance and said, Squirrel. This caused Lee to look in that direction, but Sakura continued to advance. He then smirked and pointed at the board, while he said, We will have to do this at a later date. Sakura confused looked at the board and saw her name along with Hinata Hyuga. She smiled and slammed her fist into her hand and said, Guess this will be an easy match. Naruto shook his head and said to their sensei, She is in for more problems than she is expecting. She confidently went down to the arena and took up a position opposite of Hinata in front of Hate. The weakling from our class who never got Naruto to acknowledge you, Sakura said in a demeaning tone. Up on the balcony, Naruto shook his head and said, This isn't going to end well. Hinata lifted her head just enough for Sakura to see the determination in her eyes and she replied, I have been acknowledged by Naruto-kun. By the way, how is it going with your unique love interest? Sakura shrieked at the implied insult. How dare you talk about Sasuke-kun that way, she exclaimed. Do you really know your teammates? I mean really know them, Hinata asked. Sakura looked angrily at the Hyuga heiress and exclaimed, I know them better than you do. Hinata smirked and got into a Juken stance. Hate signaled for them to begin. Sakura charged at Hinata, while Hinata activated her Byakugan. Hinata noticed two ghost-like images of Sakura appear on either side of her. She smiled and asked, Did you forget something? Sakura realized that Hinata's eyes could see through Genjutsu too late. She was struck in the right chest and fell backwards, gasping for breath. Hinata stood above her and then asked, Do you surrender? Sakura, barely able to breathe, nodded yes. Hate said, Winner Hyuga Hinata? Hinata leaned down and whispered into Sakura's ear, You should take a good look at yourself and reality. They don't mesh well. She then turned and walked up to the ring of observers. She gave Naruto a hug followed by Haku. Naruto noticed that this brought him to the attention of the Suna team. What if Fem Haku falls in love with Naruto Chunin exam? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel. And leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.